For many Black people, when your hair gets dry and thirsty or your naps are kind of misbehaving, Afro Sheen has your back.
Out of the mist of 3,000 years emerges today's beautiful Black queen. Naturally beautiful, radiant, she is Black essence. Today's beautiful queen uses Afro Sheen.
George E. Johnson was the entrepreneur behind Afro Sheen, which debuted in the 60s, and other popular Black hair care products. He was born in a sharecropper's shack in the South in the 1920s, but went on to build a national Black hair care empire. George E. Johnson died last week in Chicago. He was 99 years old. Illinois State Representative Sonia Harper followed his footsteps by launching a curl clinic, and she joins me now. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, we gotta be real, Afro Sheen, even now sometimes I'm like, I need something I want to spray the hair to give it any little shine.
Absolutely. Curly hair needs extra lubrication, right?
Yes, yeah. What memories do you have of this product and others created by Mr. Johnson?
I think one of my greatest memories is wash day. That day you get to wash your hair, and whether you're getting braids, whether you're getting pressed out, part of our menu of choice is always included. The hairdress and the spray as well. And it was about creating something that was for us, right? It was about our identity. It was about confidence, and it was about a community. And I think that George Johnson understood that, because for so many people, buying shampoo is simple. You can just walk into a store and choose from dozens of products designed for your hair. But for many Black families, that wasn't always our experience. Mr. Johnson changed that, right? It even speaks to the fact that for many generations, many of us even felt pressure to change our hair and change our appearance.
Yeah, and part of what he was saying was embracing your hair, embracing the afro, embracing our kind of roots.
Absolutely. He created products that affirmed our beauty instead of trying to redefine it.
And I understand that you didn't know Mr. Johnson personally, but his work still inspired you, or was a part of your inspiration when you launched Curl Clinic. Tell me about it.
So the Curl Clinic are workshops that I have been doing where our mission is simple. We teach every woman or person with naturally curly hair to love the hair they were born with, know the proper care and maintenance, the proper ingredients to avoid, to use, the proper regimens, everything. Know that for your hair. And that's what Curl Clinic does.
Well, how would you describe the Black beauty industry today?
Well, I think that the Black beauty industry is stronger than it's ever been. I love the way that natural hair is celebrated. I love the way that Black entrepreneurs are innovating. We are demanding healthier ingredients and products designed specifically for textured hair. And everybody is following our lead, aren't they? And I think that that's real progress.
Yes. Well, look, now when you go to any major big box store, they have a whole aisle for the textured hair, for Black hair products. They didn't used to have that.
I love it. It's making all the other, long-standing hair care companies stand up, as they also try to come for our dollars too. But that's another story.
Do you think that Black entrepreneurs in the beauty space are still facing unique challenges?
Oh, definitely. Black entrepreneurs continue to struggle accessing capital. Many fight for shelf space at those major retailers. Many of them compete against companies with significantly greater resources. Innovation has never been our challenge. We know that, but access has. And you know that Black consumers spend billions of dollars on beauty products every year. Our demographic, especially here in the United States, spends more on health and beauty products than any other demographic, right? And so I think that one of our biggest opportunities is ensuring more of those dollars help to build Black-owned businesses, create Black jobs, and generate wealth, because that brings it right back to exactly what Mr. Johnson showed us was possible.
That's Sonia Harper, a state representative in Illinois. We're remembering Georgie Johnson, who died last week. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So you're going to have to run some experiments and say, now let's see under what conditions does my brain computer seem to flow in the direction of solving problems. So I was standing in my house and it was so quiet and my brain computer was beginning to work at another level. And I said, what's going on? What's happening? And it occurred to me it was Sunday and the ball games were going on. So I said, these ball games have more significance than we realize.
The FIFA World Cup is now down to its final four. Spain versus France is the first one on the roster. A semi-final expected to be a blockbuster affair. Two of the most talented squads in world football, two nations with the biggest footballing culture, but somehow we aren't talking about the football here heading into that clash. We're talking about who is French enough to play for France. And that should trouble us. Spain's former Prime Minister, Mariano Rajoy, triggered outrage saying France is a team without French players, a sentence that immediately drew accusations of racism and xenophobia. What's worrying is that this isn't an isolated incident. The 2026 FIFA World Cup has shown how threatening the French side is. They lived up to the hype and made a mark at the 2026 event already. But unfortunately, rather than talking about how good they are as a unit, everyone seems more interested in debating over how French the players are, particularly Spain.
It's worth remembering that France has been a two-time world champion and was a finalist in the last World Cup. That said, they don't have any French players.
But here's where the irony becomes impossible to ignore. These comments are coming from a country that has spent years trying to fight racism inside its own football. All you have to do is ask Vinicius Jr. The Brazilian became the face of anti-racism campaigns after repeatedly facing racist abuse inside Spanish stadiums. La Liga promised change, Spanish authorities promised action, yet it has only continued. And it's not just Vinicius. Even Spain's own wonder kid, Lamine Yamal, has repeatedly seen his roots being dragged into football arguments. Every heated Barcelona-Real Madrid rivalry, people question where he really comes from. As though representing Spain somehow requires an ancestry certificate. So hearing lectures about French identity from Spain feels contradictory. A reason why the former Spanish Prime Minister is facing heat. What's worrying is that Rajoy isn't alone. France's round of 16 clash against Paraguay reflected how this has become a perception around the 2018 World Champions. Former Paraguay goalkeeper Jose Luis Chilavert dismissed France as an African team. Paraguayan Senator Celeste Maria posted remarks targeting Kylian Mbappe's African heritage, upbringing and identity, which brought a strong response from Mbappe himself. And it isn't just this World Cup. Perhaps the most infamous episode came after Argentina won the Copa America. Players led by Enzo Fernandez were filmed chanting songs mocking French players' African ancestry, reducing their nationality to the color of their skin. Different tournaments, different countries, different people, yet somehow the target always is the same: France. And that's what makes this conversation so uncomfortable for us, because nobody questions whether these players are legally French. Nobody questions whether they wear the badge with pride. The question is something else altogether, whether they look French enough. What makes this even stranger is football celebrates exactly the same story elsewhere. Look at Cape Verde, one of the greatest success stories of this particular tournament and this year itself, a team that pushed former champions Argentina to the brink. And how did they get there? Their federation actively encouraged players born in Portugal, in the Netherlands, France, and anywhere else to reconnect with their Verdean roots. Those stories were celebrated. They were praised and viewed as national pride. Look at Morocco. Their historic World Cup run became one of football's greatest modern stories, especially in 2022 when they reached the semi-final. Players born in Spain, Belgium, France, the Netherlands returned to represent their parents' homeland. Nobody questioned whether Ashraf Hakimi or Sofiane Amrabat were Moroccan enough. Instead, we admired how football could reconnect generations to their heritage. So here's the obvious question. Why is one direction celebrated while the reverse, the same direction elsewhere, is mocked? Why is embracing ancestral identity considered beautiful, but embracing the French identity, despite African ancestry, somehow controversial? The contradiction couldn't be clearer. Look, modern football is supposed to mirror modern society. Families migrate, children grow up elsewhere, cultures mix. National teams increasingly reflect the countries that they represent. England, Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands, Portugal, even the United States or Canada. Almost every major football nation today is multicultural. France simply became the easiest target because they only kept winning. Success magnifies visibility. Visibility attracts prejudice. We're seeing this play out at many other places. France are preparing for one of the biggest matches in their football history. Some of the finest footballers on the planet will take on the next generation in Lamine Yamal, Nico Williams, Pedri. Instead of discussing the high-voltage clash this promises to be, we're once again debating whether these players really belong here. Clearly, racism in football hasn't disappeared. It has simply evolved. Today, it hides behind words like identity. It disguises itself as culture. But underneath, it remains exactly what it has always been: prejudice in another form.
This is on page 90. You write, for decades, men's sperm counts have been falling. In parts of the developed world, they have declined by about 60% over the past 40 years. At this point, there are few human studies, but like those taking place in laboratories, the ones that exist are producing alarming results. Parabens, chemicals widely used in products such as toilet soap, shampoo, and makeup, have been associated with DNA damage to male sperm. A Polish study published in 2017 found that high concentrations of parabens in male urine samples were linked with changes to sperm robustness that contributed to male infertility. In 2017, New York Times columnist Nicholas Kristof extrapolated from current data on lower sperm counts to propose that if present trends continue, by 2060, a majority of the men living in Europe and North America might be infertile. Yikes. Dr. Welsing moment for sure.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is worried the military doesn't have enough testosterone. On Wednesday, he announced a plan to begin screening service members to make sure they have adequate levels. NPR's Will Stone has more on the plan.
In Hegseth's view, testosterone is a matter of national security and wartime readiness.
This initiative, it's not about artificial enhancement.
That's the secretary in a video posted on social media yesterday.
It's about restoring and optimizing your natural capabilities, protecting your longevity, and ensuring you have the biological foundation required to sustain the fight.
According to Hegseth, service members 30 and older will have their testosterone levels checked annually. Those who are younger will have the option too. If levels are indeed low, they could pursue testosterone replacement therapy. The guidelines from major medical groups do not recommend this kind of routine screening unless a man has symptoms. Dr. Martin Miner co-directs the Center for Men's Health at Brown University.
I think it's very aggressive, but it depends on how it's implemented. It's a little frightening to me.
His primary concern, the policy could encourage young men to reach for testosterone replacement therapy before trying to correct the underlying drivers, like poor sleep and obesity.
If you just tell men your level is low and we need to optimize it to make you a better fighting machine, to me, that's not really doing them a service.
Especially since taking testosterone does affect fertility. But other experts think it's an entirely reasonable proposal, including Dr. Mohit Khera, a urologist at Baylor College of Medicine.
Men who have low testosterone levels will suffer from decreased energy, decreased muscle mass, some form of depression, and poor mood. Those three in themselves, for someone who's in combat, is a significant disadvantage.
He says checking for low T and bringing it back to a normal range is very different than advocating that it should be boosted to unnatural levels. And there's an ongoing discussion in his field about whether most men should be screened. Khera says it can be a powerful marker of overall health. He acknowledges most men in their 30s will ultimately not screen for low T and require treatment.
However, we are seeing that younger and younger men are having lower and lower testosterone levels. Why? Every decade? Because we're becoming more unhealthy as a general population.
This latest initiative fits into the Trump administration's broader push, spearheaded by figures like Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., to promote men's health and expand access to testosterone. Will Stone, NPR News.
The Delectable Negro, Human Consumption and Homoeroticism Within U.S. Slave Culture, by Vincent Woodard.
Now we'll talk about why so many New Yorkers who rely on SNAP benefits keep getting scammed out of their EBT funds, and why the state has been slow to respond. If you have an EBT card, an electronic benefit transfer card, on which you receive SNAP, there's a good chance you woke up one day recently to find your funds zeroed out, maybe in transactions at stores in states you've never even stepped foot in. It's happening on a remarkable scale. A recent survey of SNAP recipients citywide found that nearly a third of them said they had had benefits stolen in this way in just the past 3 years. And unlike a stolen credit card, when a scammer drains an EBT account, no bank steps in to make the victim whole, nor does the government. The money and the food it was supposed to buy are just gone. That's because, as our next guest reports, EBT cards were never built with the basic protections we take for granted on our debit and credit cards. Meanwhile, overseas crime rings have figured out exactly how to exploit that gap. And state and federal officials have mostly been pointing fingers at each other over who should pay to fix it and who should pay the people who've already lost their benefits. Rosa Goldenson, contributing writer for the City Reporter, has a huge story on this fraud that's already won at least 2 journalism awards, and she joins us now to talk about it. Rosa, welcome back to WNYC.
Thank you, Brian. I think it's just 1 award, but thank you.
1 award. Okay. Well, maybe it's 1 award I read twice. Do you know the basic numbers in New York City of how many people do get EBT cards, do get SNAP benefits? A lot of people, right?
Yeah, it's 1.7 million New Yorkers, which is about 20% of the city. It's an even higher share of households, about a third of households, and that includes 500,000 children.
So that's a lot of New Yorkers at risk. Who is scamming those folks out of those benefits?
Well, so according to the Secret Service, which investigates counterfeit crimes, that's why they're involved in this, the sort of cyber criminal fraudsters at the very top of this who are they're producing devices that suck up these numbers, and they are coming out of like very organized transnational crime rings that are originating from Eastern Europe. There have been arrests of Romanian nationals. But these are very hierarchical organizations. So you might have runners at the very bottom who are, have no idea who they're working for, and the money is getting funneled up to the people who are making the big money, which is actually a very small group of people, according to the Secret Service.
And how are they doing it?
So they create these gadgets, these devices that go on little point-of-sale terminals like you use your credit card on, and they slip on really quickly. They glue on or slip in in a matter of seconds. and they match exactly what a point of sale terminal looks like. So it's not something you just kind of mock up at your house, right? It's something that's produced.
Mm-hmm.
And then those devices send wirelessly or cache inside them the information of people who swipe. They get the numbers, the card numbers, and the PIN numbers for anyone who uses them. Now, that's not just EBT users. That's anybody who swipes with a card like that. But EBT users then are especially vulnerable to being defrauded.
Let me see if I understand. Are you saying people are going from store to store in New York City and maybe elsewhere and clandestinely inserting these things into the card readers at the cashiers?
That's exactly right, yeah. And it's often can be a two-person operation where one person's a little distracting, or they put a big box on the conveyor belt or something, and the other person just quickly slips it on. They obviously have already sussed the place out. They know exactly what the little sales terminal looks like, and they're replacing something on the top of it or inside of it that is undetectable to the naked eye, pretty much.
How did they get away with it? Are they paying the stores a kickback in many cases to let them?
No, I mean, according to the Secret Service, and this is basically what people think, a lot of times the stores have no idea. I mean, you really can't necessarily tell. I went out with the Secret Service on one of their they go about a few times a year. They'll go to hundreds of stores and they'll jiggle the point of sale terminals and try to see if they have something in them. They'll stick a little detector in to see if there is a skimmer gadget in there. But they're not easy to detect. And you can do this quickly. You can do it. You can do it. Without anybody really noticing.
And to talk about the victims, people who fall victim to this kind of EBT fraud are having to make do without food in many cases, according to your article. You tell us that some are relying increasingly on food pantries, and this is really a gut punch. As you write, a Flushing father of 2 teenagers hopes to satiate them with instant ramen, 3 for 99 cents. A 6-year-old loves fruit, but her single mother, a preschool teacher, says, I couldn't do it for her this month. So you reported, besides on the scam, you reported on the victims.
Yeah, people are literally not eating. I mean, just drinking water, just trying to get by through the month. The thing is, my credit card, my bank-issued card, has fraud detection. So if my numbers are taken and somebody tries to run a bunch of transactions on it in the middle of the night all over the state, my card will just reject those. But EBT cards have no such protections, so people just lose everything, often in the middle of the night, just hours after their monthly benefits have dropped. SNAP benefits can be used for groceries, for food. That's about it, and that's what people rely on them for. So unlike a credit or debit card, which has liability protections and would be reimbursed, these cards aren't. So people are just high and dry. They simply have their food money zapped. Food pantries really cannot fill that gap. They're a $60 box of food that you can pick up every couple of weeks. If you wait on a line during working hours, a lot of people on SNAP are working people, simply does not replace monthly food benefits.
And we have another listener who texted, Rosa, you just described at the beginning of the segment some kinds of international crime rings. Where suspicion tends to go, though. Listener writes, could this be an inside job by SNAP employees?
Look, this creates a lot of fear and confusion, and I have heard the phrase inside job many times. I think that the truth is what happens is so simple. It doesn't require any kind of inside job. You can actually call anyone who has obtained the card number and PIN number for an EBT user can simply call the state hotline and enter in those numbers and find out when exactly your benefits are dropping and how much to the penny you will receive. So you don't need an inside man to do this. But I think it speaks to, the fear, the confusion, and the devastation when this happens to people, and it's a widespread concern people have. They feel like it's an inside job. On a sort of zoomed out level, it's not that it's an inside job, but what it is structural and completely preventable. Right. In the sense that we have the technology to prevent this, and we also could, although we don't, reimburse people when they lose their benefits.
And I see that we have a member of the New York State Assembly calling in on how to fix this problem that she's working on. We'll put her on in just a second. Here's a good question from a listener, though. How do they cash in the EBT food? So if this, if that value is supposed to be earmarked for food, after they skim it from the cards, how do they cash in?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's called trade-based money laundering in law enforcement parlance, or as we know it, fell off the back of a truck. They go buy a pallet of Red Bull or so they produce little fake, they get a card reader and they produce fake dummy versions of the original cards, which only have a magnetic stripe. So you can't do that to my card. It has a chip. You can't just make a fake one of it. But these you can easily replicate because they're such ancient technology. And then you go spend that at a store, and then you can resell the goods, or even this happens, they're shipped to other countries, like big pallets of chocolate bars, and they can just be resold to businesses.
Money laundering through Red Bull and chocolate bars. There's our headline.
That's why we have to think as black people. Stop singing and dancing and start thinking.
Wow.
Thinking and reading. I say reading is more important than watching TV.
In the last few years, there's been growing concern about how reading habits are changing among children, both in school and at home. That includes questions about what kids are reading and why fewer books seem to be part of their educational diet. Now, a provocative new essay is widening the lens, raising similar questions about reading habits across the broader population. Senior arts correspondent Jeffrey Brown has our conversation.
You can see it in the numbers. Fewer than half of all American adults reported reading a book of any kind in 2022, according to the National Endowment for the Arts. And just 38% read a novel or a short story. A separate survey found the proportion of Americans who read for pleasure on a given day fell from 28% 2 decades ago to 16% in 2023. In some ways, it's a continuing trend, but a provocative new cover story in The Atlantic puts it far more dramatically. The age of reading is over. It's by Rose Horowitz, a staff writer at The Atlantic, who joins me now. And thanks so much for being with us here. Now, it's a big statement that you're making, so why don't we parse it a little bit. What do you mean, first of all, by the age of reading?
Yes. So what I meant by the age of reading was that this is bigger than what the statistics are showing us, that what is really going away is a time when reading was a major way that people transmitted, culture, information, news, and really derived meaning from text. And, my piece is arguing that that's ending and that we're entering what I call a post-literate age.
And as you remind us at the beginning of this essay, this age of reading, which many of us have been so immersed in for so long, it actually doesn't have that long a history.
Yes. Well, so, I think we think of reading as kind of something that's innate or inevitable, but actually it's quite historically contingent. Reading first emerged 6,000 years ago, and it was only relatively recently that, large numbers of people could read and that people spent a lot of time pleasure reading. So this is something that is kind of new. And when this age started, it really transformed society and the way people thought and the way politics and culture worked. And as it's going away now, I think we're seeing changes of the same magnitude in our society.
Now, you refer to what we're entering as a post-literate age. And there's been plenty of discussion, of course, about social media, short videos on TikTok and elsewhere. And you're arguing that we are reading differently already. So what do you mean by a post-literate age?
If we look at the statistics, people still know how to read. The literacy rate is actually historically very high. And, in many ways, we're probably reading more words than ever. If you think about the number of emails and text messages and social media posts you're reading, we're inundated with words and we're surrounded with them. But what's happening is that this kind of these number of words that we're swimming in has made it so that it's almost so difficult to focus on, any serious or complex work of literature for an extended period of time. And so it's not a crisis of literacy, it's that we are entering a post-literate age.
And you write, reading shaped the modern mind. Its disappearance will reshape it. How will that change things?
The bedrock principle in neuroscience is that you get good at what you practice and your brain adjusts to, improve at the things that you spend time doing. And so if we are spending less time reading, as we know that we are going to struggle much more to do it. And it's not that, we're going to be unable to decode words, but we have much less background knowledge and vocabulary to aid in comprehension. We are less accustomed to persisting through something for an extended period of time. And already we see that, 2 decades ago, the average attention span on a screen was 2.5 minutes, and 5 years ago, it fell to 47 seconds. So we're already seeing, people kind of being less accustomed to focusing on something. We're already seeing an erosion of some of our, abilities to do complex synthesis and analysis and comprehension, and we can expect that would continue.
And some of these things, we have been looking at on our program and, of course, have been well documented elsewhere, just the way this impacts children and the way they learn.
Yes, I think for me, reporting this piece, sort of the most chilling statistic I found was that only 2% of American adults report reading to a child on any given day. And so I think, we see now that the current young generation enjoys reading much less and spends less time reading than today's adults did when they were kids. We know that every year older a child gets, the less they like to read. In focus groups, high school students described reading for pleasure as an alien practice. And something else that we know is that schools are assigning fewer and fewer books throughout middle and high school. In a survey last year, teachers in middle and high school reported assigning between 0 and 4 books a year, and 80% of elementary school teachers in a separate survey said that students receive a digital device by the time they enter kindergarten. So we're seeing that schools are really changing where they're assigning far fewer books, and so I think that we can expect that this trend that we're seeing will only accelerate in the years to come.
So one thing you write about in the piece is the way that the changes in thinking, the changes in reading impacts who has influence in our culture. It's gone away from some of the traditional, perhaps, sources as writers to influencers and others. Tell us a little bit about that.
In a recent poll, 30% or 60% of Gen Z said that they would be an influencer if they could. And so I think it's a very different way of culture being passed, of power, being in society. We know that cultural and economic power tends to flow to people who are skilled at using the dominant communications media of the age. And right now, that is short form video, and it's not text.
I can't resist at the end of our conversation here pointing out that this death of writing warning comes in a very long and fairly complex essay form.
Yes. So I write in the piece about my own experience reading and growing up in a family of readers and having books passed down to me from my parents and my older siblings. And there definitely was an irony in putting this, warning about how nobody reads in a 9,000-word essay. But, I wanted to share my experience because I think that other people can relate to it. I loved reading when I was a child, and I still love reading today, but I noticed that it almost slipped away from me without me even noticing.
All right. Rose Horowitz, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
The Watcher, the Watcher, the Watcher, the Watcher, the Watcher, the Watcher, the Watcher.
Law enforcement agencies across the country use AI-powered cameras to scan billions of vehicles each month, often without drivers even knowing they're being recorded. Supporters say the technology helps solve crimes. Critics warn its rapid expansion is creating a nationwide surveillance network, raising questions about the balance between public safety and personal privacy. Paul Solman dives into that debate.
A quiet Saturday afternoon last September. Denver resident Chrisanna Elser gets an alert from her doorbell camera. A nearby Columbine Valley police officer has come calling.
You know why I'm here?
No. He pulled out a picture of my truck and accused me of stealing a package.
We have cameras everywhere in that town. You can't get a breath of fresh air in or out without us knowing.
Police-operated cameras had recorded her driving near the scene of the crime. Only problem, she had nothing to do with it.
They caught me 20 times driving through the neighborhood that we drive through to go to work every day.
Police had simply matched their video with doorbell footage of the theft, showing a blonde, like Elser.
Well, can I see this video?
If you go to court, you can. If you're going to deny it, I'm not going to extend you any courtesy. If you're going to lie to me, I'm not going to extend you any courtesy.
It was shocking to have somebody come in so strong and rely on the digital evidence.
Small black cameras mounted on utility poles began appearing around the neighborhood in 2024. But so what, says Elser?
I took the stance that everybody else takes, that, big deal, it's up there. If I'm not doing anything wrong, then why am I worried about it?
Turns out these cameras extend far beyond Denver. Today, more than 100,000 are installed across all 50 states, according to crowdsourced data from anti-surveillance organizations. The vast majority owned by security tech company Flock Safety.
Let's shape a safer future together.
We build hardware and software that help cities solve crime.
Flock's Josh Thomas says they make other devices to detect gunshots, for instance. But
our bread and butter product is a license plate reader. We are pinpoint focused on the back of a vehicle to identify the make, model, color, the license plate, the state of the license plate,
timestamps, locations. But Flock's AI-powered cameras also record bumper stickers, dents, to match against local and national law enforcement hot lists.
So when there's a wanted person, an outstanding warrant, a hit and run, a missing person, they will add those license plates to the list. So in real time, if one of those vehicles drives by a Flock Safety device, we'll send an alert to local law enforcement.
The data is also stored on a searchable cloud database for 30 days. And so misuse can happen, as with Chrisanna Elser, among others documented in local reporting. But it's rare, says Thomas. What's far more common, he says, the technology helps solve crimes.
They're helping solve somewhere between 800,000 to 1 million crimes every calendar year. So roughly about 20 to 25% of all reported crime in America is being solved in some way or another with Flock technology.
You can always take the stories of the worst case scenario, but what's unfortunately and doesn't seem to get hit a lot are the stories of the best case scenario.
Todd Chamberlain, chief of police in Aurora, Colorado.
And there are some stories where lives have been changed through the use of this technology.
As in Denver last December.
A woman had put her child, a 14-month-old baby, into her vehicle. She had her car idling. Somebody came along, saw an opportunity to steal that car, and that mother was basically left watching her car drive away with her 14-month-old baby in it.
Flock tracked the car, reunited mother and child.
Thank you guys so much.
Without that Flock technology, we might not have found that or 2 or 3 days later. That technology saved that 14-month-old baby's life.
So, on balance, technology for the good? Well, Chrisanna Elser, for one, might disagree. And Flock allows search data to be shared with police nationwide, potentially tracking Chrisanna Elser's anywhere.
When you have a national database of these cameras that can be queried by law enforcement without a warrant, that qualitatively shifts something about the surveillance.
Joseph Cox is a journalist with 404 Media.
This isn't a small beat local police officer just looking into local crimes necessarily. You can have an officer on the other side of the country search for vehicles on the other side of the country as well.
On behalf of ICE, for example.
And that has clearly worried a lot of people who are now having a conversation about, do we actually want these cameras in our community?
A few weeks ago, using a commercial search engine,
I very easily found the administration interfaces for dozens of flock safety cameras.
And last December, YouTuber Ben Jordan gained access to over 60 flock video feeds in cities across the country.
All this is relying on is knowing where exactly to look. And with that, we were able to see just how powerful some of these cameras are.
But Flock's Thomas says the leak was caused by cameras mistakenly configured to be public-facing, rather than private feeds.
We have hundreds of thousands of sensors out in the world. A very, very small number had a public-facing IP address. He did find those. And the second we found those, within 48 hours, all of those were changed.
Which is either reassuring or not.
There are YouTube videos that can teach you how to hack these cameras.
Meanwhile, opposition is growing.
If this camera sees you, you will be put on a database alongside every other law-abiding resident of this city.
We are asking for the flock contract to be terminated in full.
In the past year, dozens of cities have canceled contracts following public backlash. And Flock now says it's willing to talk about how its tech should be regulated.
There's kind of no denying that it has clear benefits to cities. But the question, I think, is a very real one, which is, what's the trade-off we're making in society? Are we comfortable with that level of trade-off? And I think those are fair questions to ask.
Back in Denver, Chrisanna Elser parried the charges against her with surveillance tech of her own.
I gave him a Google map of where I was. I gave him the video from my truck that showed where I drove, gave him the video of the business I was at.
She spent real money on tech defense. Why?
If there's digital evidence out there that somebody has of you, you should have your own digital evidence.
You mean this is like spy versus spy, or?
It was all kind of like, what do I have in my arsenal to prove myself innocent?
Her own digital evidence ultimately cleared her, which is why she suggests that you, me, and everyone should have an arsenal of our own. But that's assuming, of course, that we can afford it. For the PBS NewsHour, Paul Salman.
The man knot, race, class, genre, and the dilemmas of black manhood.
Kevin Strickland, Lamont McIntyre, and Ricky Kidd all spent decades behind bars for crimes they didn't commit. They're all walking free now thanks to the work of the Midwest Innocence Project. The nonprofit works to exonerate people who have been wrongly convicted of a crime, and oftentimes is a person's last hope. Like many nonprofits, the Midwest Innocence Project is facing tough times financially, putting the future of the organization in jeopardy. Today, Steve is joined by the executive director of the Midwest Innocence Project, Tahir Atwater, to discuss the future of the nonprofit. Let's listen.
You know, you're the executive director of the Midwest Innocence Project. Remind listeners what the organization does.
So just to piggyback on what you've said, I think of it as three different pillars. Number one, it's the representation. We exist to overturn wrongful convictions, and we provide that representation free of charge for all of our clients. Yeah. That includes investigations, that includes the screening of the cases. That second pillar, we look at policy research to understand wrongful convictions, try to prevent them from happening, because right now we estimate at least 4% of people incarcerated are wrongfully convicted.
4%?
4%, which comes to about 4,000 people just in the 5-state region that we serve. 4,000 people. That's a low estimate for people who are currently wrongfully incarcerated, people who are in prison day after day for something.
That's really a staggering number.
It is, and it's likely a low number. So that's the second part, is how can we influence policy to make sure that this doesn't continue to happen, because it's continuing. And then the third piece is our social work. Last time I was able to bring our staffer, our friend Courtney Ellis, who's our social work manager, and they're providing much needed assistance to people who are currently incarcerated, and of course to our clients and their families once they're released.
Keep their heads up while they're in prison. There's hope out there.
Absolutely.
We're working on it. And the challenge for you guys is oftentimes these cases take so much time.
I mean, years and years. Lamar Johnson, so the St. Louis case, took over 12 years. That took over 12 years.
Is that a problem with the judicial system just in general?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There are still so many people within the judicial system, within the criminal legal system in general, that prioritize finality over getting it right. And there are many who seem to think that once a judgment's been passed, that's it. And so the whole idea of wrongful conviction and the fact that it exists, the fact that it is a systemic issue, sometimes you have to just start there and make sure that we're both working off of the same foundational understanding that, yes, wrongful convictions exist, and they need to be studied, they need to be looked at, And organizations like us are providing a very, very vital function to our society today.
You know, when you talk to judges when you talk to other lawyers about this kind of thing, what do they say? What's the explanation for why it takes so long and why it can't change?
Ironically enough, the same reasons for, the integrity of the criminal legal system is, I think, paraphrasing why they would say that it takes so long. Well, we want to make sure we're doing things by the book, we're doing things the right way. And we'll say, well, it's sometimes doing those things in the way that is considered right, these technical aspects of the law, these mechanisms that unfortunately make it much easier for someone to be convicted and much, much harder for that conviction to even be looked at, let alone overturned. Yeah. So I think these mechanisms that we put in place, you need expertise to understand them. And likely you shouldn't need someone who can just walk in off the street and understand it. It should be, there are layers to it, and we understand that. But the fact that it takes us maybe 12 years just to even get into court, and ultimately preventing us, here in the home state, we've talked about this in the state of Missouri, it's almost impossible to bring a freestanding claim of innocence to the court. So if I'm in prison for something and there's a witness that comes forward and says, hey, I can show you evidence that he was with me the day of this crime, that's not enough to get me into court in the state of Missouri, except for maybe some exceptions. And so it should not be that difficult for us to not just prove innocence, but make sure innocence gets its day in court.
I'm just wondering, as you get out and talk to citizens, much less lawyers and judges,
right.
Do you find yourself having to overcome a certain level of skepticism
Absolutely.
And doubt that, hey, you're really telling me that 4% of the
Absolutely.
Inmates today in the Midwest are there wrongfully? I mean, really, buddy?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think, there's some causes I've been a part of in the past where people may not understand them, but they lean in, right? If you're working with children, for instance, when we're talking about wrongful incarceration, you are met with some skepticism. And that gives us an opportunity to talk about the fact that our staff and our legal partners, we're screening cases for years. We're investigating those cases for years to even determine whether or not we can bring this case to court. So when we're talking about the 18 freed and exonerated clients that we've brought home, these are all people with innocence claims. I think that's probably the first thing that people need to understand is everyone we represent, this is an innocence claim. This isn't someone saying, I'm guilty, but there was a technicality. These are all people saying, I did not do it.
Mm-hmm. And as you know, if you go into a prison today, almost everyone there will tell you, I did not do it, which only complicates the level of difficulty for what you're up against.
It makes it incredibly painful. One of our friends and clients, Faye Jacobs, she went into prison when she wasn't even 20 when she went in, and she talked about how difficult it was because she would profess her innocence, and she did that for decades, and that actually made her a target for some people who really it upset other people who were incarcerated, who thought that she was trying to claim that she was better than them. And she's like, no, I'm just trying to tell you my truth.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of our clients, whether they're incarcerated or even today after they've been freed and or exonerated, just living that truth of I've always been innocent, they're still met with that skepticism, even with the record that's been cleaned.
How did the Midwest Innocence Project how did it get started in the first place?
So we've been around now since 2025, and
since 2021.
I'm sorry,
2001. Yeah,
2001.
That was just last year.
Yes,
yeah.
That's right.
Yeah,
25-year anniversary this year. Thank you. That would have been awkward.
It happens.
So we, like a lot of innocence organizations around the country, began as a clinic with my alma mater, MU, and slowly but surely that work continued, and it grew. And my predecessor, Tricia Rojo Bushnell, was at the helm for about 11 years or so, and she did this remarkable job putting this team together that I get to be a part of now.
Our listeners might recall the case of Kevin Strickland, who spent 43 years in a Missouri prison for a murder he didn't commit. Midwest Innocence Project fought for his exoneration. How many others have you been able to secure an exoneration for? I think you said...
We've had 18 people freed or exonerated in our time, and that's pretty remarkable given the region that we serve. I mean, Nebraska, Missouri, Kansas, Iowa, Arkansas, these are regions that can be fairly hostile to innocence work, to wrongful convictions. Because, again, sometimes there's just this this belief that finality over truth, finality over getting it right. And in some of these, in the states that we're in, there can be a pretty strict adherence to that idea that, hey, if they've already seen their day in court, they don't need to see any more. No
These
matter
are more conservative states.
Yes, oftentimes. But it can run the gamut. It can run the gamut politically, and we try not to make it a political issue because it is happening in blue states, it's happening in red states, it's happening in all these different counties and jurisdictions.
Yeah.
Prosecutors all over the country. Some are allies. Some really work with us. Right? They have these integrity units that they've established. So that's been something that we love to see, right? That's been progress within the criminal legal system.
Right.
But there are others who are still very much opposed in fighting every case when it comes to wrongful conviction.
I'm visiting with Tahir Atwater again, Executive Director of the Midwest Innocence Project. It's facing some financial challenges. Let's talk about that, Tahir. What is your financial situation? What are you up against right now?
Well, this is why it's so critical for us to be on your show today. So we're in the midst of a $500,000 fundraising campaign. We really kicked it off in earnest at the beginning of this month. And that's to ensure that MIP continues. It's to ensure that we're here not just through this year, but that we're here moving forward. So it's not just about fundraising. It's about sustainability. It's really a call to action for all of our supporters, current and past, to get involved.
Before I forget to ask, how can people contribute? How can they connect?
I would say the best thing they can do is go to our website, go to themip.org, and there you'll see all across, you'll see banners for donating.
Yeah.
For those who want to invest financially, we're welcoming it. We are inviting you in so many different ways. We have a monthly giving program. We have so many different ways, whether you're giving $50, whether you're giving $200, whether you're giving 4-figure gifts, 5-figure gifts, maybe some 6-figure gifts, right?
Yeah.
Whatever you can do. And we have a generous donor who through this month is going to double all donations up to $50,000. So we have a $50,000 matching gift. So whatever people want to give, your dollar is going to go twice as far.
Sounds like you're raising money for KCUR. We use that language here ourselves a lot. So back to the issue at hand, October isn't far away. If you raise the funds you're looking to collect, just quickly to hear, just real quickly, how long does that sustain you? Just 5 seconds.
It puts us on a sustainability pathway moving forward. That gets us kind of out of this dark time and back on this path of, okay, now we can really focus on not just the work we do, but the work that we're going to do moving forward.
That was Tahir Atwater speaking with our host, Steve Kraske.
And then I got into Memphis, and some began to say the threats, talk about the threats that were out. What would happen to me from some of our sick white brothers.
At least 5 people have been shot by the Memphis SAFE Task Force. That's a law enforcement operation launched by President Trump back in the fall to tackle crime in Memphis. 4 of those confrontations were fatal. And nationally, these shootings add to a troubling, steady drumbeat of deadly encounters with federal personnel. NPR's Juliana Kim and Kat Lonsdorf have been digging into this task force and join us now. Hello to both of you.
Hey, Elsa.
Hi. Hi. Okay, Kat, let's start with you. I know that you've been reporting on this task force ever since it started. What can you tell us about it?
Yeah, the task force is made up of about 350 federal agents from multiple agencies and also more than 1,400 Tennessee National Guard members. The U.S. Marshals Service is leading the task force, and they're all working closely with state and local police. This was a task force that was welcomed by Tennessee Governor Bill Lee, who is a Republican. Memphis Mayor Paul Young, a Democrat, has been less enthusiastic about it, but doesn't have much power to stop it. Historically, Memphis does have one of the highest violent crime rates in the country, but those rates were trending down before this task force was launched. I've been to Memphis a few times during this task force, talking to people there. In the beginning, I was hearing a lot of folks who were cautiously optimistic that maybe some extra resources in the city could help. But in the past months, there's been a lot of immigration enforcement activity and now a wave of these shootings. A lot of people are questioning the strain it's putting on the community.
I can imagine. And Juliana, I know that you have been talking to the family of one of the men who was killed by federal agents in Memphis, Jonah Neal. He was fatally shot by federal agents while suffering a mental health crisis. And I understand that this is the first time that we're hearing the family's account of the shooting, right? What did they tell you?
Yeah, I spoke with Jonah's mom, Jessica Neal, and she was actually one of the Memphis residents who were cautiously optimistic about the task force. That all changed in May. Jessica says her son was threatening to end his life with her handgun one night, and she immediately called 911, but instead of local police, agents with Homeland Security investigations came. They operate under ICE. When they arrived, Jessica says one of the agents told her to step outside, and minutes later,
I heard a gunshot. And that was it. I don't know anything after that.
Jessica's immediate reaction was that her son pulled the trigger on himself. It wasn't until the next day when her sister sent her an article that Jessica learned it was a federal agent who opened fire and struck Jonah. The family is demanding to see any video from that night. Meanwhile, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations told NPR it's investigating and didn't have any information they could share. You know, we also reached out to the task force about the shooting, but were directed to TBI.
Yeah. Well, what did you learn about Jonah himself?
Yeah, his family described Jonah as smart, quiet, and caring. I also spoke with his grandmother, Cindy Leachman Aldridge, and she said one of her favorite moments was listening to music together, like the song "Groovin" by the Rascals.
He'd say, "Groovin." He'd just start singing. He was so much fun. So much fun.
It was only in recent years that Jonah started to struggle with his mental health. But his family says leading up to his death, Jonah was becoming more open to help. They also emphasized that Jonah was not a violent person.
So tragic. And Jonah, I mean, he's just one of several people who have been shot and killed by this task force in Memphis, right?
Right. I mean, just last week, there were 2 fatal shootings by the task force, one by members of the Tennessee National Guard over the 4th of July weekend. And then last Wednesday, a DEA agent shot and killed someone while attempting to serve an arrest warrant. A similar incident to that happened in May. The TBI says it's investigating all of these incidents, but it's really hard to get a lot of information on them. It's not even clear if there was any body cam footage from some of them, for example.
Mm-hmm. And it also reflects what we're seeing on the national level. That is a troubling pattern of shootings involving federal personnel. And it comes as the Trump administration ramps up their use of federal agents to, address crime, clamp down on protests, or conduct immigration enforcement. Right. Most recently today in Maine, there was a fatal shooting involving an ICE agent. And last week, there was a deadly encounter with ICE in Houston.
God. And I'm curious, what are experts saying right now about these shootings?
I mean, they're certainly taking note of that troubling pattern I just mentioned. We talked with Miriam Nemeth. She's the executive director for the ACLU of Tennessee. She's been worried for months that Memphis would see more instances of deadly force by federal agents, like we have in Minneapolis and other cities.
I turned to my colleagues and I said, Memphis is next. I'm terrified that Memphis is next.
She said this string of shootings is, quote, deeply concerning, and there needs to be more accountability.
But like I said before, Elsa, it's really hard to get answers about this task force, in large part because of all the different agencies operating there. I talked to Thaddeus Johnson. He's a former Memphis police officer, now a senior fellow at the Council on Criminal Justice. He says it gets really complicated when you put federal officers, military, local police working together. At a very basic level, many officers aren't coming in familiar with the city.
You're not trained for it. You don't have a connection to the community, and you're coming in like a foreign invader, and that's how citizens see it.
He called this a very short-sighted way to view public safety.
That is NPR's Kat Lonsdorf and Juliana Kim talking about the federal task force in Memphis. Thank you to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me say something that gets to the very crux of the matter, and this may be offensive for some to hear who are not on the side that we're on. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years.
Say that again.
Let me say it one more time for those of you who didn't hear me. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years.
Now let's get to a 12 News exclusive. After more than a decade, a resolution tonight in the chokehold death of a 16-year-old boy at a West Dallas convenience store.
Corey Stingley died in 2012 when customers restrained him after he was caught shoplifting. By the time police arrived, Stingley was no longer breathing.
12 News' Nick Board just spoke to his dad as the two men involved took responsibility in court, now 13 years later.
What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now!
The death of 16-year-old Corey Stingley in 2012 led to numerous protests. 3 white men held him down in a West Dallas convenience store after he tried to shoplift $6 worth of alcohol, suffocating him.
3 men who killed my son were 3 white men. They strangled him. There's no reason that the men who killed my son should still be out on these streets. No reason, period. But they are, and that's because this system is broke.
Prosecutors decided against charges, reasoning that because the men weren't trained in proper restraint techniques, Stingley's death here was an accident. But Craig Stingley, his father, kept fighting, pursuing justice.
State of Wisconsin versus Robert Beringer.
Finally, through a deferred prosecution agreement, the 2 surviving customers involved in Corey's death, 67-year-old Robert Beringer and 39-year-old Jesse Cole, pleaded guilty to felony murder. In court today, a judge signed off on their 6 months of community service, vacating their convictions, with Craig Stingley's approval.
I would say this is the maximum that we could, impose upon them. They had to admit to it, that there was culpability on their part. And that's something, for 13 years, they still lived in that denial.
Stingley himself met with the men before the deal was reached to make sure, above all, they understood what was lost.
The system had to acknowledge that this young man had humanity and that he deserved the same, treatment that every other human would get.
Stingley only wishes he didn't have to fight so long and so hard to get it. In West Dallas, Nick Board, WISN 12 News.
The third man involved in Stingley's death died before those charges were filed.
I'm suing y'all! Oh, I'm hurt! Oh, my neck! My back! My neck and my back!
The first tonight at 5, prosecutors accuse a West Dallas police officer of using excessive force.
They say he kneed a suspect in the back of the neck. Jason Calvi is here with the new charges.
And Sam, prosecutors charge Officer Anton Best with a felony, one charge of misconduct in office with the allegation he went beyond his authority. If convicted, he could be locked up for 3.5 years and be fined up to $10,000.
On January 30th, West Dallas PD responded to a vehicle with no plates and heavy damage. They say it had already run away from Elm Grove PD. Officers reported 2 men jumped into an SUV and sped away. West Dallas police say the SUV crashed on South 124th in Brookfield and the 2 men ran away. But an officer caught up to one of the men. Investigators say body camera footage shows 3 officers were working to get handcuffs on the suspect, and he said he was cooperating. Prosecutors say Officer Anton Best then walked over to the suspect, who was on his stomach on the ground. They say he was, quote, hopping and then dropping down forcefully with his left knee on the right neck and right shoulder blade area of victim A. Victim A grunted. Prosecutors say this interaction was caught on camera. The suspect asked another officer, "Did you make sure your foot was on my neck good?" Prosecutors say Officer Best responded, "No, that was me, buddy." Victim A then asked, "You take pride in that, right?" And prosecutors say Best responded, "Sure do." Another officer reported the suspect complained of neck pain and appeared to have difficulty holding his neck upright. The complaint says another officer said he believed the action was unnecessary because the person was handcuffed, compliant, and had surrendered.
So we haven't yet seen this body camera footage, but we will hopefully see that as this investigation now goes to trial. Now, West Dallas Police says it asked Brookfield to investigate the matter, and then at that time they placed the officer on desk duty while the investigation played out. Now that he's charged, West Dallas has suspended the officer. I called an attorney I'm told is representing him, but haven't heard back. And I spoke to the person who lives at the home where this arrest took place back in January. She tells me the person arrested actually came back to her home later, knocked on the door. He said he was looking for his phone and his necklace that were lost in the arrest.
I and my white friends
Family members are pressing for answers in the death of 18-year-old Nolan Wells in Mississippi. Wells disappeared during a 4th of July boat trip with a group of high school friends to an island off the Gulf Coast. Wells, who was black, was the only member of the group who did not return to the mainland. His body was found in the water days later. The friends he was traveling with are white. Authorities say there are no signs of foul play and that Wells drowned, though the investigation remains ongoing. His family is seeking an independent autopsy and calling for a full and transparent investigation into the circumstances surrounding his death.
I would hope that any parent who, God forbid, would be in our situation, I would hope that you would do the same thing. I would hope that you would ask for any help, receive any help to get answers, because at the end of the day, that's all we want. We just want to know. We just want to know what happened and why our baby didn't come home. Like that's our biggest thing.
We're joined now by the family's attorney, Ben Crump. Mr. Crump, thank you for being with us. What's the latest you've heard from state or local officials about where the investigation stands and what they believe happened to Nolan Wells?
The only thing we've heard is what was suggested at the very beginning before any forensics was done. Seemed like before any interviews or interrogation of any of the witnesses who were on the boat, and that is they don't believe it's any foul play. They think it was an accidental drowning. That has been the suggestion, and that's very troubling for Christine and Elmore, the parents of Nolan Wells, as many of us in the black community, because we believe that they are trying to sweep this matter under the rug, especially when you think about the history of the state of Mississippi when it comes to black people being killed in highly questionable situations and nobody ever having any accountability.
Local officials said that the friends are cooperating with the investigation. Is that true? And what explanation, if any, have his friends given for leaving the island without him?
You know, we don't know the level of cooperation the friends are engaging in because they all have retained attorneys. But what Nolan's family and friends feel like, had the roles been reversed and that these had been 3 young black men and there was only 1 young white man and he ended up dead, that the investigation would be much more zealous, that there would be interrogations, they would be separated, they would be held for all kinds of crimes and misdemeanors until somebody started to talk, that they would challenge the narrative that has been presented, and that being that Nolan voluntarily said he's going to stay behind, and his parents and friends outright reject that. They say that is not of Nolan's character or disposition, and had he done so, would he have ever not wanted his cell phone? We're talking about an 18-year-old kid. And so many things are troubling and conflict when they listen to these narratives, try to explain why Nolan Wells went out with them on the boat. They all came back alive, and Nolan was washed up on the shore unalive.
You shared a photo on social media that appears to show Nolan Wells at a land-based pool party in Jackson County on July 5th. We have the photo there on the screen, and there's a red circle, and he is in one of those red circles. And now this was a day before he was found dead. How does this photo call the timeline into question?
Well, so many people, and that's the thing that gives us hope that we will finally get to the truth of what really happened, because so many young people are talking and they're sharing photographs and they're sharing videos and they're calling our call center and telling us that they were on Horn Island. And so I think the photograph that you're displaying is one that was presented to Nolan's mother and to my office that we shared on social media to simply say that if people have any information about who's in this photograph, when it was taken, where they were located at when they took this photograph, it would be very helpful because there are many things in that photograph that we think can help build to what was the atmosphere on that July 4th weekend.
There are certainly at this point more questions than answers. What does his family, what does Nolan Wells' family want the public to understand about him beyond the circumstances of his untimely death?
You know, everybody, not just his mother and father, but everybody who's talked about Nolan Wells talks about what an angel of a person he was, how he was this gifted college football player, student athlete, how he was so considerate during school that he would always try to help people, no matter who they were. They said Nolan's smile would just brighten a room. They talked about how Nolan was a person who was responsible. So that's why they dispute him saying, I'm just going to stay on the island. And when you think about the conflict and the statements between the young lady he was talking to who said he told her that he was going to get back into the boat with the boys. And then the boys said that Nolan said he was going to stay and talk with her. Obviously, the statements conflict with one another. And that's one of many contradictions and conflicts that are glaring in this case. And so we're just trying to ferociously search for the truth.
Attorney Ben Crump, thank you for joining us this evening. We appreciate it.
You know, I and my white friends.
Just days ago, police arrested 2 teenagers in connection with Erving's drowning and have charged them with tampering with evidence. The family addressed this in a news conference earlier today. Our Sade has the story.
Today we heard from Daniel's mother. She was very emotional and distraught and say these last 3 months have been nothing but agony as they search for answers.
Our family has gone through so much the past 3 months, waiting for the justice system to provide justice.
Complete agony, day and night. From the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep. It's a soul tie between all of us. We're so equally yoked and connected that we feel this deeply.
It's been 3 months since Daniel Erving drowned in Lake Ray Hubbard. According to the affidavit, Daniel and 2 other teens jumped into the lake off a bridge. DPD says after conducting a thorough investigation, they determined the cause of death was accidental. But just a few days ago, 19-year-old Lucas Roper and a 17-year-old were arrested for tampering with evidence.
To conduct an independent investigation as to the cause of death of Mr. Daniel Erving. Now, you may ask, why do we need an independent investigation? That is because this family has lost confidence in the system that is supposed to protect them. This family has a distrust of the Dallas Police Department. They have not given this death of an 18-year-old Daniel Erving the urgency it deserves and demands.
According to the affidavit, the 2 suspects are accused of throwing out Daniel's clothes, driving away from the scene in his car. The affidavit also indicates that Roper admitted to deleting text messages between him and Daniel from his phone.
A reasonable-minded person would know if you are not guilty of a crime, why would you throw away his clothes and delete messages and not even call his mother?
My white friends.
With this new information, the family is calling for murder charges.
Daniel Erving was an honor roll student. He was a member of his swim team. He was a strong, healthy young athlete. For these 2 suspects to say he drowned and they left, It doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. Something smells off to us.
I reached out to Dallas police and the DA for further comments. They declined due to this being an active investigation. In Dallas, for Sade Holguin, CBS News, Texas.
That if you want ultimate expression of white supremacy and the white supremacist mentality, and you want to put it in the form of one person that I would name, and that's something I very seldom do, it would be Jeffrey Dahmer. He's the ultimate expression of white supremacy. Everything that he was doing, working in a chocolate factory, the whole 9 yards, storing black male bodies in canisters of lye and alcohol and whatnot, got them in the refrigerator, and cannibalism and all of that, and calm, very methodical. Even when questioned by the law enforcement officers, very calm. Hannibal Lecter.
Frozen femurs in the freezer. Jeffrey Dahmer.
Many of Sade Robinson's last remaining belongings have gone missing. Her mother says she found a storage unit with her daughter's things empty. 19-year-old Robinson was killed and dismembered following a first date with Maxwell Anderson in 2024. 12 News' Hannah Hilliard spoke with Robinson's mother, wanting to know where her daughter's keepsakes are tonight.
It was pure shock. This is my daughter's stuff. As Sheena Scarborough opened her storage unit Friday to find nothing inside.
This your final time. Where's the is my daughter's at? Everything was completely empty. The locker was removed.
The extra space storage unit near Richards and Keefe, once full of important items belonging to her late daughter, Sade Robinson. 2 years ago, the 19-year-old was killed and dismembered during a first date. Now her last remaining heirlooms and keepsakes are missing.
There's no price on the items that have been, I just want them. I want them back. I'm waiting on an answer. I'm hoping and praying that there was a mistake made.
Extra Space Storage says it was not one of their workers who emptied out the unit, instead calling this situation a, quote, unusual targeted break-in.
Milwaukee police confirming to 12 News they are investigating the theft. Scarborough, who says only close family knew of the storage unit, is now desperate to get those items back.
The trauma, the layers of trauma that we continuously have to deal with ongoing, it is ridiculous. It's like no time allotted for healing or trying to find any peace. This was just a stab in the heart. It's like losing her all over again.
In Milwaukee, Hannah Hilliard, WYSN 12 News.
Extra Space Storage says it will work with authorities on the investigation, including providing police with security footage.
An unusual targeted break-in. An unusual targeted break-in. Context of White Supremacy. Gus T. Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the global system of white supremacy. Today's date, Saturday, July 18, 2026. So I have been told. Our weekly counter-racist weekly review. That right there. I do think the other news reports that were played important. Daniel Erving, many important reports, but that last report right there about the theft of Sade C. Robinson's belongings, that right there is one reason we're supposed to be broadcasting on Saturday. Hey, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, Neely Fuller Jr., Dr. Kamal Kamban, Dick Gregory. There are many, many black people. Robert F. Williams. There's a long tradition of black people who said, hey, being abreast of what is happening on a planet dominated by white supremacy racism is something that is mandatory. Can't just sit around, watch TV, and be about entertainment and new dances and songs and all that old foolishness. We are supposed to be aware of what racist man, racist woman, racist child are doing. And that is one right there, being abreast of what is happening in Wisconsin, Milwaukee specifically. Even I went back to WISN News where I saw that report. I struggled to even find it. Like, it was just, I think, Friday that I saw that. I think it just got reported on July 17th. And I went back to the site on July 18th, and I couldn't, I guess they have new events happen and, you know, all things go on in Milwaukee and Wisconsin in general. But, man, check and be aware of what is happening locally, nationally, and globally within the system of white supremacy racism. Man, invest if you think the C.O.W.S is constructive. Hit the blog racism-notes.blogspot.com, racism-notes.blogspot.com. PayPal button in the top right corner. Beneath the button, you'll see the links for Cash App, Venmo, PayPal. Enormous gratitude for all of the investors who've kept us on the air 17 plus years, hopefully worthy of your time and energy. I did put in the descriptions online and elsewhere. This is the White Friends edition. In fact, alternatively, the Not All White People Are Racist edition of the C.O.W.S. Man, oh man, we will get to that. But I mean, hey, if you're going to say that one, all the way through say that. Not all white peoples is racist, and shout to Michelle Alexander, my white friends. Indeed, what a performance from the White Friends. News reports that we heard before we get to all of that. When they had the report on the passing of the late victim of white supremacy, George E. Johnson, and his hair care product empire, he was like Neely Fuller Jr.'s age, so he must have been doing something correctly to be a victim of white supremacy for all of those years and hang out, see a lot like Mr. Fuller. I would think he might have been doing some correct eating, maybe correct sleeping in there, maybe, just maybe. Beyond all of that, that was Aisha Roscoe with NPR. We've heard many reports of hers over the years on this broadcast and others. She's a black female victim of white supremacy, importance of black journalists. She opened that segment discussing the passing of Mr. Johnson, and she said, talking about his hair care product, she said, when your naps, NAPS, are misbehaving. And I just, certainly VGQ, Victims Guaranteed, qualified on how we articulate ourselves, but man, I don't generally hear people who are classified as white, I don't hear their hair referred to as misbehaving and in a widespread manner. Not even my hair was misbehaving. Like, this is something that we can relate to when our hair collectively is misbehaving. Like, dang, I could be in error, but I think that's one of those where even just naps in there, I generally do not use the word naps. I'm very aware that some people, like the other N word, nigra, say that is a term of endearment, and it shows all the affection that they have for coiled hair, and they are taking possession of that term back, and it doesn't have any connotations to it that would suggest inferiority or a defective nature of black people's hair. Okay. Victims Guaranteed qualified again. That is not my view, particularly with the way that I've heard that word used frequently. You got to get rid of even that. Like, when your naps good, didn't just say hair. It could have said that. Your hair, your coils are misbehaving. When the naps. Even that right there carries the connotation that something unruly, got to be beaten and tamed and straightened and chemically neutered and all the rest of it. But anyway, Mr. Johnson, seems like it. What sort of business are you going to have as a black person? It seems very constricted. I could be in error. The Oh, and in that segment, they said, they were saying that there's been so much progress with regards to entrepreneurship and black hair care and healthier products and more. Hey, you got more, they said, big box stores that carry black hair care products. I guess for one, no, I'm not a black female, so there might be a totally different understanding, and certainly there's a much greater knowledge on this subject matter that black females have than myself. I know there are black males who are hair care technicians, and they're smart too. Gus ain't one of them, and most of the black dudes that I know, they don't have that knowledge. Anyway, that's not something that I celebrate, even from my ignorant perspective. I have been down many an aisle in a so-called big box store, and I do have, cousins and mommies and grandmothers and all the rest of it, so I've been around black females a time or two in my life. Man, I've seen lots of big box stores, not like recently, for like decades, where they have had a section of black hair care products. That's not, wow, racism is almost, that's not my perspective. And I thought they were just having all of those posts and protests, and we're going to boycott Target because they done went back on their word about all the wokeness and DEI after George Floyd, and they done snatched a whole lot of the black-owned products and such and shrunk the black section down. I thought that's a big box store, as they say. Didn't that just happen? So that's not my perspective, that, hey, we are making a lot of progress, and the metric is black beauty products are healthier, they're more available, and white-owned big stores are carrying them and making easy for everyone to access these products. I guess, and even if that were the case, I still don't know if I would say that is, we are working to end the system of white supremacy racism, and we're getting a little bit closer. Not my view. Anyway, the section on, wait, even one more. Wait a minute. When they said, and that was Illinois State Representative Sonia Harper, when she said, black consumers spend billions of dollars on beauty products every year. Our demographic, people classified as black, especially here in the United States, spends more on health and beauty products than any other demographic. Whoa, that is another one. I do not, if that's true, I'm not saying that she's lying or anything, but just that's one I didn't get a chance to double check. And is that accurate? And, do they have studies to support that? If that is true, that is nothing to brag about or celebrate, in my opinion. Like, whoa, I'm not opposed to people, wanting to be attractive and make sure when you go out, you are, can present your best face, as they say. Again, I'm not a female, so there are probably lots of differences in how we assess this, but dang, as victims of as a question, as victims of white supremacy, should that be that we are the demographic that spends the most on health and beauty products? I guess you could say that's a part of our victimization, and maybe we're trying to I would say wellness, but no, I don't think so. If it's things to chemically mutilate our hair and such, and our struggles around white beauty, racist beauty standards, no, I would not say that that's wellness at all. Not even close. Should we be spending that much on beauty products in a system of white supremacy racism? Man, especially a lot of this stuff, they have so many videos, what I would say might be some form of progress. A lot of folks saying, hey, we don't have to spend all this money on these products. You can make healthier products with ingredients you can pronounce at home, save a lot of money, and reap a lot of health and wellness benefits. Now, but I didn't hear them talk about any of that. I just heard them talking about entrepreneurship and getting in white-owned stores and all the rest of it. VGQ, I'm not a female. Next, they said they were talking about FIFA and the French team having too many dark people on the team. That's the system of white supremacy. France Fanon and Toussaint L'Ouverture, even Vietnam, all of the non-white people that the white people born in France run around and raped and terrorized, and all the rest of it, Sierra Leone, all the rest of it. Oh, well, they just came back to so-called homeland. And now we want to play a little football, too. Whoopee. And the migrants that they complained about and all the rest of it. And then have people sit around and mock the team for having all of these dark people. You got all these, not even French, you got all these dark people on the team. I mean, even real talk, in my view, if they say, hey, I was born in Haiti. Hey, I speak impeccable French. I'm on the team. Get out of here. Like, what are you talking about? What are you talking? They say, I'm from Martinique. I speak impeccable French. I'm on the team. Get out of here. I'm from Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh. I'm on the team. And we got the baguettes and everything. We're on the team. Get out of here. White supremacy, system of white supremacy, racism say, we on the team. Now get out of here. Talk all that nonsense, man. And why is it even that? That's what the focus is? You got all these dark boys running around and they're kicking the ball. And come on. Real talk, I think a whole lot of these so-called European teams, if you're going to have a good team, you probably going to have some dark people on the team as we move forward. I don't pay attention to soccer and all like that, but watch, 2030 when it comes back around? Watch and see how many dark people they have on the teams or whatever. Even watch the last match. When is it? Argentina, Spain? See how many dark people on the team. And see if it ever goes back to being just lots of pale people like they were talking about black men in Brazilian soccer that we read not that long ago. And had the author who translated the book on right after the passing of the great Pele. The segment on testing, Secretary of State Pete Hegseth testing the testosterone levels of the soldiers, Welsing moment, and reminded me of Judith Finlayson. We had her as a guest on the program in 2021. She talked about the reports suggesting that by 2060, 60% of males in North America and Europe will be infertile. I remembered that report. I said, that might be true. That might be false. I don't know. Either way, it's not that far away. If we eat that broccoli, take care of ourselves like Mr. Johnson, we might be around to see some of this. Now, even if it's not true, but white people are anxious about that, you could see them responding to all of this. That could be a component. We got to immediately, so concerned, we got to test your testosterone levels. Make sure you fit to fight and be a man. Well, we'll just keep. I would love, man, I wish Dr. Welsing was with us to hear what she had to say about that one. And even within that report, I thought it was so. And the same thing Judith Finlayson say, her book, what's her book? You Are What Your Grandparents Ate. She didn't say you need to go and get medication or some sort of concoction to boost your testosterone. She connected to the same thing that they said. Diet, what you been eating? All them ultra-processed foods and hot dogs and alcohol and Cheetos and Lunchables and Chips Ahoy with the standard American diet, all of that. Infertility. Eat whole foods, quality diet, especially, as she has it in the book, especially if you're thinking about you want to have children. Oh my goodness. Get rid of all of that. Now you're not eating cheeseburgers and McDonald's and frozen pizzas and Snicker bars and honey buns. Get your diet correct. If you serious, males and females, she said, get your diet correct. They said, got a whole lot of these folks thinking that, man, we need to go get IVF and such because the female, something wrong with her eggs and all of that. And the male been eating all that bad food and drinking alcohol and in bad shape, and your sperm got a problem. That's what she connected it to, was the food. Eat correctly. That right there would be reason enough. Do some cooking instead of sitting around pouting. Got to dirty up these dishes and stand over the stove. Get in the kitchen and do some cooking. Let's see the report, and they said sleep correctly too. That's important. Sleep correctly. Fuller talks about that one. Gus T. Oh man, sleep correctly. The report from NYC, New York Public Radio, where they talked about the coordinated international rings of EBT fraud to get your SNAP benefits so you can't even eat Delectable Negro. I didn't play that entire report because it was like 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and they had people called in too, so I tried to play the most pertinent parts. But later on in that report, they did explicitly state that most of the people who are targeted, who have their EBT funds taken, and then they got to go to the food pantry or starve for the month, are non-white people. And they might have said it as people of color, but either way, people who are not white. They said it explicitly in that report. They said a lot of those people, I guess in New York, would be people that were classified as so-called Asian. So there might even be a language barrier as well, where they're not able to report or grasp as quickly what happened and all the rest of it. But they said that in the report, which even when they said that about 500,000 children in the New York City area are impacted by this fraud, that's got to be a whole lot of non-white children. They've been saying for a while, you don't even have white children being born like that in this part of the world. So that's a whole lot of non-white. Delectable Negro. Are we going to have enough to eat in the rotten apple of New York City? The next report where they talked about a post-literate society, that's how Michelle Alexander and her white friends can get over we don't do no reading, don't have no information, even they said lacking the ability to seriously focus for an extended period of time to read a piece of trash like her book to even grab, because she doesn't say till later in the book that, hey, white women like my mama, even though she doesn't say it's her mama, white women like my mama who marry a black dude, they victims of racism too. Just like George Floyd. White people mistreat her and kick her out the church and everything and call her names because she married a black boy. She also a victim of white supremacy. You'd have to have serious, sustained focus to keep reading to say, what in the hell did that high yellow wench just say? What? I thought this was supposed to be, ooh. We had to keep it. We took us 12 weeks reading once a week to read that thing, but we read cover to cover. For non-white people, I think this is crippling. And everything that they said in that report, like, oh, I could have played that one like 3 times, where they said this persisting through something for extended periods of time, persisting through something that is not seasons, episodes, next Netflix option that's on autoplay. No. I'm actually reading a book where I have to use my brain computer, not passive consumption of entertainment. Matter of fact, there was a listener who sent me a book this week and they put in all capital letters, this is not a book club suggestion. Thank God. And they said, I heard about this here book, such and such, such and such. It was about prisons, and I don't care about prisons. I don't know if you all know this or not, but we've done many programs about prisons. We just read Michelle Alexander's book, so I'm like prisoned out. But I am not interested in like prisons, police books generally at all. John Burge would be an exception. If they ever write a book on Abner Louima, that would be an exception. But generally speaking, that is like one of my least favorite subject matters. The police go out and beat up a black dude. I generally don't care about that stuff at all. I just try and be informed enough so that I'm cognizant. Yes, I know who George Floyd is. Okay, moving. Yes, I know who Eric Garner is moving forward. That's not like that. But the person who told me about this new book, they didn't say it was good. I read this book, or I read half of it. I got it. I read a teaspoon of it. I looked at the table of contents. They said what I've said about us in a post-literate society. And again, this is how Michelle Alexander, Lion High Yellow Wench, can get over. I didn't say post-literate. I said we are pretend literate. I said we are semi-literate, illiterate, non-literate. That's what I said. I just didn't have the post-literate on there because I don't know when we ever were literate. We were one of those 4, and that's where we are now. But man, when you are in that environment and you have people who do not read, it is super easy to fool those folks. And, we don't even everything that they said there. Reading is not really something that you would do. You have to build it as a skill. It's like playing the violin, doing yoga, jogging, your brain computer. They say that metaphor, it's a muscle. You have to read in order to, okay, this is something that I can do and I feel comfortable doing. Not, this hurts and I don't want to do this. I don't read it. Just throw it right at that. That right there, that is most non-white people. We hear about books from and I said this before, we will hear someone on YouTube talking about a book. We'll hear someone on a podcast talking about a book. That's what the person who wrote in with the suggestion, they heard someone talking on a podcast about this book. They didn't even hear the author talking about their own book. That's why I said non-literate, pretend literate, illiterate, semi-literate. You can pick out one of the four, but that's generally what we have. And we are too ignorant. I mean, everybody, Gus T included. I'm not doing that talking about y'all. No, we are way too ignorant. I mean, every last one of y'all, us, we are way too ignorant to be not reading, or to just be, I heard about a book and maybe I'll get around to reading it in the next 5 years, but I can spend 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day watching TV, video games. I can't say enough for myself. Audiobooks, that's better than listening to TV, watching TV, video games, and all of that. But I mean, that is not sustained, serious study in my view. I just said yesterday, hey, audiobooks ain't got no pictures. We got pictures in the memoirs of Robert and Mabel Williams. Got Robert F. Williams in a zoot suit as a young black male in New York. That's not in the audio. And the big one I said, every book is not presented in audiobooks. The vast majority. Andre Bloom's My Country, Africa was just made into an audiobook. We read that over a year ago. So in some instances, does that mean you have to sit around and wait years, if ever, for them to turn it into an audio book? None of Neely Fuller Jr.'s works are in complete audio version, professionally done to my understanding. The ISIS Papers is not in a professionally generated audio book. Yurugu is not in a professionally presented audio book to my knowledge. It's lots of books that was Jonestown a CIA medical experiment? And just go on and on and on. Like, man, I would probably say most of the books that have ever been written are not in audiobook format. So if that's the only way that you consume literature, wow, you're going to be substantially limited as to what information you have. And I think for a lot of us, we don't pay attention, we don't highlight, we don't do serious studies. So that's not really pretend literate, semi-literate, non-literate, illiterate. I do not think that works the brain computer in the same way at all. Continuing. The section of, oh my God, they said I don't have children. I've said that all the time. I don't have children, so I'm not presenting this as I'm an expert and I would know how to do it if I was a parent of a black child. I'm not saying that at all. I would be crying every day. It sounds terrifying to me. Most difficult job in the world. All of that said, they said in that report about a post-literate world that on any given day, 2% of parents read to their children. WTF? Are you serious? That's another one, too. They say what we read now more than ever. WTF? That's most of what the reading is now. I would humbly submit, if you're online, you're on social media, you're on TikTok, you're texting and all the rest of it, apparently even texting to your coworkers, it's going to be a lot of emojis, profanity, acronyms. It is not going to be complex thinking. It's going to be a lot of exactly what I just said. I'm not even really reading jargon, slang. So when it's time to think seriously about complex matters, the system of white supremacy, racism, that moron Gus Teagues, Hey, let's stop using all the metaphors. Let's stop using all the jargon. We can't even talk in a precise scientific manner about serious things because we got such limp noodles. We don't do no read. We don't do no thinking. We just passive consumption of entertainment that passes for research. I heard somebody talking about a book that I might read sometime, probably never, but I heard somebody talking about a book that I thought was constructed. Even that's another reason I don't take your suggestions for a book worth toilet paper. It's not even worth used toilet paper to me. You all suggest books that you don't even read. Even if you have the book, you're too lazy to make time to read a book that you own, but then you come and say, Gus T, read this on the book club. If you don't get out of here, used toilet paper, man. I don't take no suggestions from y'all. I don't take suggestions on books from the illiterate. I don't take suggestions for books on the pretend literate. I don't take suggestions for books from the non-literate. Catherine Massey, but that's one thing I will say. Since this is a skill that needs to be built, man, the cows would not exist if Gus T was post-literate. I look forward to having authors on this program, and not just having, I've said this for years. It should separate the cows from everybody, really, from that data, white and non-white. I read these people's books when they come on the program. I told you, we had Preston Lauterbach as a guest on the program Wednesday. Oh, my God. I've been saying this dude is in trouble for a month. Why? I had already read more than half of his book when he was supposed to be with us last month. Now I can slow read this book. What they say, extended focus, concentration on something serious. Yep. Now I'm going to easily finish this book way in advance of you coming on the program, have ample time to even do extra study and go in the acknowledgments and read slow. That's how I ended up watching one of those extra documentaries where they explained that code, where I said, wow, it was 352 informants in Memphis. At least, if I didn't have the extra time, him saying he was sick, I probably don't watch that film. But that's for 17 years. Read, serious study. The book club, a serious part of that, because lots of times from the book club, we've ended up getting other authors and other areas of study. Columbine is a bit. Hybristophilia. We've had listeners. That's how we picked up a whole term. Hybristophilia, the study of Columbine, and having other guests come on who talk to us just about the books that we've read. Hopefully, the Catherine Massey Book Club for 14 years that it's been in existence has modeled serious counter-racist literary studies. For one, we've been on the whole time uninterrupted. For two, there has not been one book, even when we've read Michelle Alexander's second worst book I've ever read, even the books that I say are horrible, we read them cover to cover, disciplined, right here. And it's not like we get to the end and Gus ain't have no highlights and ain't have no introduction and this book was lame, and let's just finish it. What did you think of the last chapter? I don't know. Let's be like, no. Serious highlights the whole way, brain computer on. That is important. As I said, I just recently saw in some of these studies lamenting the end of people reading. Not only have some areas of the world said this is a national security issue because people don't have the ability to read about the dangers on the planet, white supremacy, racism mostly, but then also, dang, all of these people not reading strengthens your ability of your brain computer to solve problems and make connections with other bits of information in the world. I just read that. Reading, because it's so unnatural that the more you do this, the better you do this, your brain computer gets stronger. That is amazing. Like, I've never heard anyone say that about watching television, not Netflixing, not YouTubing, not TikToking. Like, no form of screen consumption have I ever heard. Your brain computer will be strengthened. You sit down and you watch 15 seasons. Woo-wee. You do a little binge watching? Oh my, no. In fact, I've heard the other, hey, you sitting and watching all that TV can drop your sperm count. I have heard, I think that's in Judith Van Layson. You are what your grandparents ate. I have to go and double check that one, but I think it is, and I think we even talked about that when she visited with us in 2021. My memory may be bad. You all can double check me to see if that's accurate. They had the report on the flock camera usage. And they went out, they said they went to Columbine of all places, what I just mentioned. Reb and Dill, they should have had the flock cameras up when they were out thinking, we're going to bomb the city and bomb the school and kill 500 people and all of it. They should have had the cameras. They could have nipped all that in the bud before it got started. Michael Scholes. But they go with all this nonsense about the flock cameras, and they said that everybody thinks, at least they said originally, that everybody was in agreement that we need flock cameras. No, the heck, everybody was not. There were people. I was at the meeting last year in Milwaukee where it was a whole room full of people saying, we don't want no facial recognition cameras, and y'all already got these flock cameras and everything else. We already got concerns about that. No, it was lots of people who were already raising concerns connected. 1984 saying we don't need Big Brother and encroaching, and y'all already got your nigger knockers and enough equipment to terrorize us. You don't need nothing extra. Now you just got more concerns. I even was going to insert, we have been covering Milwaukee in many ways. It's Milwaukee where I played 2 different reports of enforcement officers who were using those flock cameras. To one of them, he was tracking like one of his former girlfriends and trying to see where she was going. And then one of the officers who was supposed to be investigating the officer who was illegally using the flock cameras, the license plate readers, he got caught doing the same thing. He was going and checking females and such all over the Milwaukee region. Like, what in it? And that was recent. That was like within the last 30 days. So no, everybody did not have that stance before, and certainly not now. Seeing all of this, I think that was a white woman. That was just audio, but I think that was a white woman, Elsa, who said that the officer came in and was so bold and confident that we got the digital evidence and we got your vehicle and you went by the scene of the crime and we know it was you. And if you're not going to agree with it, I'm not going to cooperate at all. If you're not going to go like, whoa, wait a minute. 1, I thought there was supposed to be a presumption of innocence. 2, I ain't robbed nobody. Like, what are you talking about? She even asked, she said, well, do you have videos? Nope. If you're not going to cooperate, then I know I'm not showing you no video. Like, dang. They said she had to go and get her own digital evidence to show, like, hey, this is where I was. This is the camera from my own vehicle so you can see where I was. This is the camera from the business where I was at. This is the camera where you can see where I drove to in the bank and all of this. Now, that's tremendous if you have all of that information. But they said in the report, that costs money. Like, how many non-white people would, okay, I got the camera. I know Nick over the road said, hey, I got my body camera on me. So that's one. I mean, that's sad, but I mean, dang, is that one that you have to think about in this thing? Like, you got to have a body. He had that. Nick over the road said, I have my body camera on for work unless I've been misinformed. Does everybody, civilian, if you're on the job or not, everybody got to have a camera on? Like, as soon as you leave your house, I got to have my own background camera and everything so you can see exactly where I was. This is what I was doing, date, time, all of that. I guess you can put the information on your phone so you can see this is the exact direction, date, time, stamp, what I was doing, where I drove, all of that. Is that like, that's what it is at this point? And I thought the cameras and all of that were supposed to eliminate this problem. It's not supposed to be that you got the cameras and everything and now you show up at the wrong person's house. This was supposed to be, hey, we're going to have this perfected. Ain't going to be no, we got the wrong person and blah, blah, blah. This is going to be accurate. It ain't been nothing of the sort. They done said the whole way through. Now, you know, this don't identify black people correctly and all these dark people, we don't quite get them correctly. And even we messing up the white people. We getting people who just happen to be driving through and the actual perpetrators of the crime. Like, come on. And not to mention people using these cameras for illicit purposes to begin with. And even that officer's conduct out in Colorado. If it's going to be that you have race soldiers who now have undue confidence that we know we are 1,000% correct off the jump. Ain't no presumption of innocent. Like, this even changes the way that we interact with you as a suspect, because we don't think of you as a suspect. You did this. You might as well be a convict in our mind. Like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, no, we don't need to have this at all. Like, way pushback, way pushback for like a billion different reasons. You can talk all that you want to about, man, we done solved these crimes and we had a little white 14-month-old that was found in the car and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. How many whoopses do you have in addition to all of these so-called carjackings that you have fouled up with your camera usage? Get out of here. Like, come on. And what's the rate in terms of when you put these flock cameras and all this other technology, when you put it up in white neighborhoods, do you put it in their areas at the same rate that you put it in regions with non-white people? Or is this going to be piled up where non-white people are, where it doesn't have work and you get to be corrupt in your usage of it anyway? Lots of reasons. I told you, it was white people in Milwaukee who were saying this is racist. It was not a room full of black people. It wasn't even non-white, non-black people. It was white people filled up with signs saying this is racist and we don't need this in the 414. 3-hour meeting, 3 hour. And all of the black people that I told, they weren't even interested in going to the meeting or even talking about this. The only people that I talked to while I was there who were interested in this were classified as white. The segment on the Midwest Innocence Project. Now, you want some black male privilege there. They mentioned at the beginning Lamar Johnson, Lamont McIntyre, and Kevin Strickland, all black males. Now, Ricky Lee Smith, that's the only one that they mentioned that, hey, we helped get him out of greater confinement. That's the only one that I saw who I think this might be an actual white person who was. And there are white people who get wrongly convicted for sure, but overwhelmingly privileged black dudes. I just mentioned 3 of them. The president of the Midwest Innocence Project, Tahir Atwater, they talked about their big-time budget deficits, and they only had a staff of 12, which I found shocking. I thought it was, a lot more people than that. And then they're having such budget difficulties, they had to cut it down to 9. I'm not surprised. Now, I know they might say it's, times of austerity and inflation and oil prices and all the rest of it. I am not surprised that an organization that you got lots of privileged black males who've been wrongfully convicted, that they are having difficulty getting funding. I'm sure other people are having difficulties as well, but the privileged black males can't get a few nickels so that we can get some of these folks who've served decades in greater confinement so that we can get them out. I don't know, man. That McIntyre, he probably did do something. If he didn't do that crime, he would have done something else. And then y'all trying to get him compensation too and get him millions of our tax dollars because they've been locked up and all that wrongfully. You say, I don't want a Midwest Innocence Prize, some commie enterprise or something. I don't care. We have to support Midwest Innocence Project. Support if you have an extra nickel. That is constructive work. Black males locked up wrongfully. That is not helping us end racism. Midwest Innocence Project. Man, I won't quite get to the end, but that report on Corey Stingley, I did not know that Corey Stingley was killed specifically in Wisconsin. That is the privileged black male who was accused. They didn't even say accused. They didn't even say suspected in the report. They just said, Corey Stingley, who was shoplifting $6 of alcohol. Like, wait a minute. This is what I just said. What happened to the presumption of innocence, which certainly was not the case here? We got an execution on the spot by race soldiers who weren't even employed at the store. They weren't even enforcement officers. These are 3 white men who grabbed a black teen and choked him to death summarily on the spot for $6 of alcohol, allegedly. I didn't even think the security guy. They got armed security at the Whole Foods in Seattle. They don't even choke you out if you steal from the Whole Foods. They will shoo you out of there and they don't choke you out for stealing from the good white people's Whole Foods. How is it a death sentence on the spot for $6 of alcohol allegedly, and from 3 white men. That's what we need to kill one black teen. I remember this case from 2016. Matter of fact, I brought this case up because people were saying we got black male privilege when these old black dudes, worthless, when they get killed or shot or strangled or stomped on or whatever it is, hey, they get all the attention and hashtags and T-shirts and all the rest of it. When black females, something happens to us, you all don't say a mumbling word. And I said, oh, really? Everybody knows about Corey Stingley? That's what happened. That's what happened. What's his name? What is it? Say his name. Corey Stingley? Who was that? That's what I thought. That's what I thought. And that happened every time. I don't think I ever got to a point where I said Corey Stingley. It was, oh, yep, that's right. He got struck. They choked him out. Yep, said he stole $6 worth of alcohol. Yep, strangled him to death on the spot. I did not know that happened in West Allis. I think I did know it was Wisconsin, but West Allis wouldn't have had as much meaning to me. One, I hadn't studied Jeff Dahmer enough, or at least remembered, wait a minute, Jeff Dahmer's grandmother, where did she live at? She lived in West Allis, which happens to be a racially restricted region right around Wisconsin, where Jeff Dahmer went and stayed at his grandmother's house and was killing people there down in the basement. All that. Remember, we read all that. We read Lionel Dahmer's biography, memoir about his child. Read that one. Man, the Atwater killing of Corey Stingley, I had no idea this is a racially restricted region, so this is a teenage black child coming into a so-called sundown town area where it's you've been accused of stealing. That might even be one where I would say, hey, talk to our offspring at a very young age so you are informed about where you're going. Now, I don't know if he lived in West Allis. It's a low population of black people in West Allis. It's something under 10%. Maybe he lived there. Well, that's even more of a reason you need to know about where you live. You cannot be going, hanging out, having, he might not have even stolen anything. Real talk. He might have just had a bottle of Gatorade in his, backpack or whatever. He said, hey, you just stole Mad Dog, choke him. And that easily could have happened. You got tons of non-white people who get falsely accused of, didn't I just say Lamont McIntyre? You have tons of black people who get falsely accused of things all the time. So talk to your offspring honestly, especially if you live right in or right next to a racially restricted region. And especially, he was, I said, a teenager. When they start getting old enough where they can venture out independently, maybe even drive legally and all the rest of it. Oh, my God. Talk to your children honestly about racism. You could be killed on the spot easily, and particularly you stumble into one of these racially restricted regions, woo, man, you could be killed immediately. That's Corey Stingley. Now, West Allis, I came right back. Anton Best, I saw that at the beginning of the week. White officer said, I'm going to do my The Rock. I'm going to do my Stone Cold. I got to do my knee smash on your spine. And the black male said, man, you proud of stomping on my spine? He said, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm proud of it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. He is a West Allis officer as well. Anton Best. And I said the same thing. That racially restricted region. This is what we are supposed to do. In fact, they put Anton Best, the white officer's picture up. He reminded me of Jeff Dahmer. He kind of looked exactly like him. I posted his picture on social media on the C.O.W.S pages so you can see what he looks like. Or you can just put his name in, Anton Best, West Allis, and it'll pop up. He's supposed to be facing felony charges for all of this unnecessary abuse of a handcuffed subject who was surrendering, black male who was the same thing. Corey Stingley, they didn't name this victim, but another black male. Hey, we gonna stomp on you, beat you. He could have killed him easy. He could have broken his neck, and then he would have bragged about it. Like, see there, did my elbow smash? Hulk Hogan don't know nothing about that. Like, and brag about it. Yeah, that's how I do it. That's how I do it. That's what we do out in West. You ain't read about Jeff Dahmer? That's how we get down out here. And we don't want no niggers out here. You seen what we did to Corey Stingley? Tried to break his neck too. We get back to Wisconsin. Now, I can't say enough. The white men who killed Corey Stingley did not work at this store. This was not you didn't rob that inventory, you taking money off our plate. They didn't even work there. Anyway, the last three reports. Now we are at the My White Friends, Michelle Alexander, thank you. The My White Friends, the not all white people is racist part of the program. We talked about Nolan Wells from last week. Same thing I said. Speak honestly to your children about the system of white supremacy racism. That right there, so that we are not thinking, hey, I'm going to an island with a bunch of white people to drink alcohol. I said it earlier this week. One of his so-called white friends said, man, Mr. Shepard said, man, we was out there and we had just been drinking all day long. And then we started to drink some more, and I guess people just started to get drunk. I said, man, as Gus T, have I not said for you, what sobriety would be best? I ain't heard nary a report about charges for underage drinking. You think if there had been a party with a whole bunch of black people and one white person was present and that one underage white person ended up dying suspiciously, you don't think they would have filed any charges for underage drinking at least? Where'd you get the alcohol from? Anyway, I say sobriety would be best, but the other thing I've said for years, one of the worst combinations in the known universe, white people and alcohol. Man, I cannot say that one enough, and particularly for younger people, because younger white people, oh man, they're going to be less refined. They get under the influence and they might be able to less control their alcohol. They haven't been drinking as long, presumably. Anything may happen. Absolutely. And Alonzo Brooks, same thing. Black male, 2004. I mentioned that case last week in Kansas, where he's drinking with a large group of white people and he ends up dying suspiciously. White people and alcohol is one of the most dangerous environments in the world. Where was Sade Robinson last seen at? In a Wisconsin bar with a race soldier. White people and alcohol, it is one of the most dangerous combinations in the known universe. And I would say, especially if you're a young person, like, talk to your children about the dangers of white people. Talk to your children about the dangers of the system of white supremacy, but specifically white people and alcohol. And you can show them example after example after example. Like Corey Stingley, bam. They said that was alcohol there. You can just pile them up. Nolan Wells, you can just pile them up. Boom, boom, boom. I told you last week, I said, hey, you can watch TV. Lonzo Brooks, Unsolved Mystery. They got it all right there. You can hear from his white friends and the nonsense lies that they tell about why they left him there. All the alcohol that they drank. They said, what was Lonzo Brooks' last words in 2004 when he went to the racially restricted region of Kansas? Anybody want a beer? To a room full of suspected racists. Sobriety would be best. You need your entire brain computer in a system of white supremacy racism. We need our entire brain computer. We can't be at no deficit, or we halfway and had a little bit of mad dog and I can't think correctly and what's going on here? Whoa, what you doing, Petey? I thought we were friends. I thought we were friends. I didn't think you were racist. Obviously. I didn't think you was a racist. Obvious. I told you. Boy, bring up the Nolan Wells case with the bot, those of you who do it, and ask, where are the non-racist white people in this case? Parents, enforcement officers, white friends. Where are the non-racist white people in the Nolan Wells disgrace? My white friends. My white friends. You can switch. Not all white peoples is racist. Daniel Erving went with his white friends. They're going to go playing black. All these water activities, too. That might be another one. Hey, we don't do no swimming with white people. They didn't want us to swim for the longest, and we keep having all these issues. They found Alonzo Brooks in a creek that was next to the house next to the party. So, man, we just don't do no swimming with white people. It just seemed like that's going to be something terroristic waiting to happen at the pool, at the beach, at the lake, at the private island. Like, it just seems like it's going to be a problem. If they can get you near that body of water, we're going to drown you or like, man. With Daniel Erving, he goes out and is swimming with his friends out in Texas at the Ray Hubbard Lake in Texas. Ray Hubbard, suspected racist, who made all these parks in Texas at a time where they were so-called segregated. They wouldn't even let a Negro at the park in the Dallas, Texas area. But he goes swimming, and then he dies suspiciously. His friend, I'm thinking, if these are my white friends, Michelle, as a matter of fact, Michelle Alexander, she said, me and my white friends, we was doing coke, we would jump off the roof. Okay, so the white friends, you do dangerous things. She didn't say when they jump off the roof and maybe somebody got hurt or blacked out or got a concussion. She didn't say, oh, Lord, we all ran away, and we left Timmy outside. We deleted his number from our phone and never talked to him again. What? Wait a minute, that ain't what you do. That ain't what to do. They said Daniel Erving, privileged black male. They said, oh, no, we think Daniel might have drowned. They didn't call 911. Can we get him help? Can we get his body at least? Can we call his mother? There's been a tragic accident. Oh, delete his number. Delete. Like, what? These are my white friends? These are my white friends? His mother up there tearfully said, man, you're not even going to inform his mother of what happened? These are my white friends? These are the not racist white people who are accused with tampering with evidence. You're going to throw away things and cover this. Sound like you did something. Did he drown accidentally or did you all kill him? You didn't kill your black friend, did you? I know you didn't kill your black friend at the lake. Why would you kill your black friend? Why would you kill your black friend? That even sound odd. Did you hear that one, my black friend? My black friend? My black friend? Not all white peoples is racist. I had intended on it being Nolan Wells and Daniel Erving ending the week to have two almost identical cases. Benjamin Crump's team involved in both. White friends spell the end. Fatal ending of a black male. But I checked that Wisconsin News report yesterday. Literally, I just saw this yesterday. I think that's when it was reported, WISN, where they have Sade Robinson's storage locker has been looted and they stole everything, all of her remaining possessions. Man, when I saw that, one, everybody make sure support Miss Sheena Scarborough. Like, I cannot imagine everything that she's had to go through in the last 2 years. It is beyond description. You can support her and the foundation, Sade's Voice Foundation.com. Sade's Voice Foundation.com. Sade's Voice Foundation.com. Visit the website, support in any way you can, or even if it's just encouragement and support for all of the dastardly acts of white supremacy, racism, and terrorism that she's had to endure since the 2024 murder, dismemberment of her child. But when I read all of this, I immediately thought, number one, the first thing that came to my mind was, and what I got in trouble for with Miss Scarborough, because I would have, certainly, if we were, on speaking terms and such, I would have called her. But I said before, last year, about this time last year, I said I upset her. Why did I, and even that, why did you upset her? I mentioned a report that was in Wisconsin Public Radio and the Wisconsin newspaper at the same time, because it was a big study, that the state of Wisconsin has 3 times the rates of alcohol-related deaths as any other state in the U.S. I said, wow. I shared that post. I shared it with Sade Robinson's mother because I did then and I do now think of Sade Robinson's murder and dismemberment as an alcohol-related death. She was underage, just like Nolan Wells and those suspected racists, suspected murderers at that party in Mississippi. But she was underage. She was not carded. She shouldn't have been at those bars to begin with to meet some suspected race soldier terrorist, Maxwell Anderson. And she was served alcohol. They got that on video. I watched it at the trial. So I do think of that as an alcohol-related death. And it's a la Jeffrey Dahmer. He used the exact same MO to lure his victims to bars. But I mentioned this report, shared it with Miss Sade Robinson's mother, and I included that Jeffrey Dahmer was an alcoholic, which is true. We read his father's memoir, and again, that was his MO. He lured non-white victims to bars. Drug them, kill them, dismember them, exact same MO, and in the exact same city, Milwaukee. And she was upset about that. She said she didn't want to hear about Dahmer traumatizing. I'm sure she got upset about that, and so minimized contact. Haven't spoken to her since then. I would definitely, if we still had a quality relationship, I would certainly call to just offer whatever support, encouragement I could. But I mean, that is exactly what I thought of in terms of why I connected this case to Jeffrey Dahmer from the beginning and then throughout with everything that I've seen. That even the breaking into that storage facility, that is Jeff Dahmer. What do you mean by that? Man, the hoarding of artifacts, and then once that case became public, oh my goodness. Now, in fact, they had to go to court and take all these measures to prevent the exact same sort of thing, because you got hybristophilia, you got all of these white people in true crime. Ooh, let me get, is that Jeffrey Dahmer's sneakers? Ooh, is that a comb Jeffrey Dahmer used? Ooh, is that the teeth of his victims? Ooh, I'll bid $500 million. Ooh, that's white culture. I put that with the bot said. I didn't even say it. The bot said that is lynching culture continued into 21st century. I got to lynch a black male and put his privates in a mason jar. I got to lynch a black male and put his finger. That's a family heirloom. We're going to save these Negroes' knuckles for the next 60 years. Remember that time we was at the lynching and we got old Tyrone's knuckles after we lied and said that he raped a black or white woman, and we lynched him, and we all came around and we took parts of the shackles, we took parts of his feet, we took parts of his toes, we took parts of his fingers. Delectable Negro, human consumption, and homoeroticism within U.S. slave culture. We done talked about that repeatedly, but that is white culture. That is Jeff Dahmer. We even talked about Robert Berdella, same thing, collecting skulls and all of that. Cannibalism, that's white culture. Ted Bundy, they get excited about why we got all this true crime everywhere. We got to worship Tim McVeigh. We got to worship Ted Kaczynski. We got to worship Jeff Dahmer and everything. We got to do all the collecting, and we got to go to the serial killer museum and all the rest of it. That's what I thought of. Who would do that? What sort of vile, demonic force would even do such a thing? Oh, that's Jeffrey Dahmer ilk. Okay, that's who would do such a thing. This is that. And then what they say, we go on the so-called dark web, and even this is the case. I went to Milwaukee. I sat through the whole trial, watched the grieving family and everything. What was a part of their grief? What did Sade C. Robinson's mother say when they went for the sentencing for Maxwell Anderson, race soldier? Where is my daughter's crown? Where is her skull? The Milwaukee police detective who worked the case, she suggested, hey, he was dumping body parts in the Michigan, Lake Michigan. That's where he went down and cleaned up after the murder scene and all that, and discarding everything. He was dumping her body parts all over Milwaukee. I think and he was throwing some of the body parts in Lake Michigan. I think he put her skull in Lake Michigan. She could be correct. She's certainly seen more evidence and up close, more so than myself. My view, just based on the study of white supremacy racism, I think he kept that skull. Miss Scarborough, she said, give back her skull. The way her question was phrased, it seemed as though she thinks he's in possession of this, or at least he knows where it is. I do too. He had a massive backpack that he was carrying away from Lake Michigan, the scene where he may have went to go dump and throw body parts away and clean up from the dismemberment and all of that, or even carry out the dismemberment at the beach. But he had a massive backpack that could easily have fit a human skull, and if she was only 19, she's still a teenager, so she's not even fully mature. I think he could have easily, in that backpack, fit her skull there. I don't think they ever recovered that backpack. I have to go back to double check, but I don't think it was ever recovered. I think he took that skull. The souvenirs, I told you, we got to have something to save, got to have something to brag about. He had photos in his phone. They didn't show those on the TV. You had to be in court to see that. All those deleted pics that he had on his phone, they were trophies. That's what this was. I'm going to make trophies and show he had cut off one of her breasts. These are trophies. It's a long history of that, of race soldiers when they go and terrorize black people. We'll cut off your genitalia. If it's a female, we'll cut off her breast. That sort of thing. We're going to have trinkets. From the Predator movie, the demon who made trophies of men. That is white people. I just shared this week. They're trying to get legislation to stop white people from making trophies where they go to Africa, when they're not killing and raping black people, going to kill giraffes and such, and then sit around and talk about Greenpeace and all that. And we got to protect the seals and everything. They just going and killing giraffes for fun so they can bring back trophies. The giraffe was, going to rape me, so I had to kill him and come back and mount him on my wall. That is white culture, man. That's what I am suggesting this is. These would be and this stood out to Gus T. What did I say at the beginning? An unusually targeted theft at this storage locker. I've seen that repeatedly over the last 12 months. I had been saying the exact time this spring when I started getting those FBI files on Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, that was when I had been doing FOIA requests for things that were happening in Washington State. There were white supremacist gangs who were robbing military installations for ammunition. There were alleged white supremacists who were robbing storage lockers, targeted unusual theft from storage lockers right here in Washington State. They were stealing ammunition and like high value paintings where they were saying in the reports like, wow, they went in and went directly to this storage locker. It's as though they knew what was in this locker. How did they know? Unusually targeted theft. I even said, but hey, it's 2026. We just heard all those reports about the flock cameras and facial recognition technology and all the rest of it. How in the world at a storage facility where all the storage facilities that I've been to or even been close to over the past, I'm going to say 10 to 15 years, they have all kinds of cameras and surveillance. Like you can't even get on the property. That the thefts that I'm talking about in Washington State, they got HD video of these people, vehicles coming in and all. There we go, boop, boop, timestamp, all of that. That's standard operating procedure. I thought, how did these people get on the facility, do all of it, remove the lock and take everything? You should have high grade images. What's the license plate, vehicle make, size, body shape, all of that, height, all of that information. How was this done under the cover of darkness? And then how did they know the exact storage unit to target to get all of that? I don't know what, I've never been to this storage unit. Nothing I needed to see, but I would think if it's at a storage unit that this was not just like a few scraps of paper, that it might have been a lot. She had like her own apartment. They talked about all that. So it might have been it could have been furniture and all kinds of things. Clothes. It looked like she had lots of clothes because I saw videos from when the police went to Sade Robinson's apartment when she was missing initially. It looks like she might have had a lot of clothes, a lot of possessions. She had her own car and what have you, and had traveled out of the country, had a passport. So I assume it was more than one or two things if it was in storage. Did they have a vehicle to come and get all this stuff? Like, I'm sure they didn't come and just put it all in a backpack and walk away on foot. Like, come on. That is, what kind of advertising is this for the storage company? Like, yeah, come put your stuff here. Like, who knows how long it'll be here? Was it an inside job? Did they pay to get information from the storage facility about where's Sade Robinson's unit at? Give you $1,000 for that information. Were they hacked? You'd have to give me like tons of information, but just like the vileness of it, it escapes words. It defies description. Again, if you're into prayers or what have you, pray for Miss Robinson. If you want to drop her a word or what have you, again, the website, SadesVoiceFoundation.com, where you can read. That's why I reached out to her and she called me back. So you can reach out to her. You can support. You can share links so that other people know about the foundation, share links about what happened. But I mean, Jesus Christ, how much terror and abuse do you have to dump on one black mother, one black family? I met her grandmother and such. Like, Jesus Christ, they couldn't even do a burial. This is in the trial and everything. They talked about this. They couldn't even do a correct burial because, one, body parts were popping up all over town and even outside of the state of Wisconsin, down in Illinois. They had to bring officers from Illinois to the trial to testify to what they found. They couldn't even do a proper burial for the longest. And then, even after they got the body parts, I told you, they didn't get her skull. And then they had to do all those police tests and studies on the body and all the rest. Like, are you serious? To go through all of that on top of having your 19-year-old killed, dismembered, and her car incinerated. They had arson charges on this, too, that he got convicted of. Then the last little trinkets that you have from your daughter, things that she didn't have in her house and what have you, are stolen. A thief, and that's what you're going to come and stand. That's what I said. This doesn't have any value to anyone except the Robinson family, Sade's family, mother, father, sister. It doesn't have value to anyone except for them and racists who would be about some true crime. Ooh, look at this here. I got Sade Robinson's sweatshirt. Ooh, I got Sade Robinson's keychain. Ooh, might have pictures of her skull and all the rest of it. But that's white culture, man. Again, my fault. 95% Gus T to blame for upsetting Miss Scarborough. Again, just by sharing what I thought was a newspaper, what I thought was accurate. And I do still think it's accurate. I still think to this day, 2026, Sade Robinson's dismemberment and murder is an alcohol-related murder. I do think that. But I do, if not sharing that would have been better to not bother Miss Scarborough and upset her. I would have much rather not shared it, even though I also think this is very much indicative of Jeffrey Dahmer, as Fuller told us. That is, if you want the essence of what white supremacy culture is about, Jeff Dahmer. That's how you can be in a situation like this. And even, I would submit, that is Nolan Wells. That is Daniel Erving. Jeff Dahmer did not present himself as, hey, I'm a racist, I'm an enemy, I hate niggers, and, you know, I got my Klan outfit on, I got my racist tattoos, and I don't like black people. I live in West Dallas with my white grandmother, and it's a racially restricted region. We don't have no Negro neighbors, and that's the way I want it to be. That's not what he did. He went and looked to hang out with black people. Let's get a beer with white people and alcohol. Let's get a drink. I'll buy you a drink. Come back to my place. I got even more drinks. We'll have a good time. It'll be a party. You want a few dollars? Oh, yeah, I'll pay you. We'll take a few pictures. I got my camera equipment. We'll get a few drinks. We'll have a good time. Last words. We'll have a good time. We'll have a good time. That's what John Bird said. We're going to have a good time. Not chop your genitals off. We're going to have a good time. Not understanding. And this is the White Friends. It did not say that. This is the White Friends edition. Could be called the Not All White People Are Racist edition. Because I said that through and through. Apparently, all of them, Nolan Wells, Daniel Erving, Sade C. Robinson, they all thought not all white people are racist. I have white friends. Error. error. Not a judgment. I'm just assessing the facts. That's all I can say based on logic. Errors were made. We need to do better. One is talking honestly to our children about the system of white supremacy racism. Hey, if you are a non-white person, you can talk to your offspring about your experiences with your white friends. Do you have any white friends? Have you had white friends? That right there. You don't need to get no highfalutin. You don't need no high yellow line Michelle Alexander to tell you about Jim Crow or nothing else. You can just talk to your offspring. Do you have white friends? Have you ever had white friends? If the answer is no, hey, that says a lot right there. You can just explain why. If you do have white friends, explain the history, the relationship. Do you all talk about racism? All of it. Do you suspect them of being racist? If not, why? How long did it take you before you didn't suspect them? If you don't have white friends now, but you used to, oh, buddy, hey, you probably got a lot of stories there. Talk and talk and talk. Me and Bill used to be good friends until that old Obama got in office and things were never the same. And for some people, that would be true. No snickering. Or whatever it is. You brought up this, or Trayvon Martin happened, or you read Neely Fuller Jr.'s book, or whatever. But if you had white friends, but you don't anymore, that right there. Talk to them in detail about that. Go back to your childhood. Did you have white friends as a child? What happened to them? You all just lost touch, or, whatever the case, because I know a whole lot of people, black people, a whole lot of non-white people, even non-white people who are not black. And they said, man, I had white friends when I was growing up. We used to hang out all the time, and I'd go to their house, and they'd go to my house, and we kicking, and I don't know, something happened. They turned about 13, 14, and they just, bam, it was like overnight, they just kicked me to the curb hard. Like, we were cool 1 minute, and then, they didn't even speak to me no more. They just kicked me to. I've heard that from lots of non-white people. Where they're like, man, I get what Fuller said. By the time they're about 15, they got like, oh yeah, I'm white. I don't. Yeah, beat it. We don't kick it no more, Lakeisha. Beat it. I've heard that from lots of victims of white supremacy. Talk to your offspring about that. If you've had dangerous encounters with your white friends, or certainly you had white friends and something dangerous happened and you decide, we can't be cool no more. Talk to your offspring about that. Clearly, we are not arming Nolan Wells, Daniel Erving, Sade C. Robinson with enough accurate information about what it means to be white, what the system of white supremacy racism is. Even, dare I say, Dr. Kamal Kamban, he used to say, our self-preservation button is in an off position. You are in Maxwell Anderson's lair, under the influence, pitch black at night by yourself. Your self-preservation button is in the off position. This is a white male who is almost 15 years older than you. Self-preservation button off. I'm a black dude, black person, period. I'm in Mississippi. I'm going to an island in Mississippi with a gang of white people to get drunk. My self-preservation button is off. I'm going swimming with my white friends. I don't think these are people who would watch me drown and would throw my property in the trash and leave my body underwater. My self-preservation button is off. I do not understand. We do not understand. What does it mean to be white? We think white people are getting better. That's what Obama said. All these are very young white people. Very young white people. Do they sound that much different from their parents? White friends. not all white people is racist. You can watch Lonzo Brooks. I say it again. We like watching the TV because if they had a book on Alonzo Brooks, we'd be reading it in the book club right now. But unless I'm ignorant, misinformed, they ain't got no Lonzo Brooks books. They ain't got no Gregory Johnson books. That's the black male who was killed at San Jose State, California, white fraternity party. You get that one more time. I mean, that might be all four of these cases. What do they have in common? White people and alcohol. But Gregory Johnson at the fraternity party, and he ends up dying under suspicious circumstances. I don't think they have a book about that case, although they have TV segments and all that. But watch that Unsolved Mystery segment with your children. Lonzo Brooks had his white friends. His non-white mother said she went to his white friends and asked repeatedly, how did you all go to a party that's 60 miles away in a region where you all knew it was racist, very racist, and you all left my child there? Why and how would you do that? She said none of them had an answer. That right there. My white friends. My white friends. My white friends. Not all, I said, you can swap that out. Not all white people are racist. That's another one. Lonzo Brooks, I've traveled 60 miles to a racially restricted region as the only black person under the cover of night to party with a room full of white strangers who are intoxicated, and I don't even know most of them, have never even met or seen most of them in my life. Catastrophic error. Clearly, we do not understand racism, white supremacy. In fact, I think he was the only one. All of Alonzo Brooks' right friends, they talked as if they were very aware. Oh, yeah, Lassine is real racist. Obviously, that's what I'm saying. Obviously, it's really racist down there. They are. What black person do you know? I should be voluntarily going to a really racist area to party with these white people that I don't know. I'm going to be the only black person there, too. If anyone is ignorant about white supremacy, racism, what it is and how it works, it is people classified as black. And our children pay. You can see that. Our children pay the price for our ignorance and even, I would say, our reluctance, unwillingness, failure to speak to our children honestly, frequently about the system of white supremacy, racism, what it means to be classified as white. Any hoodles. Ray Hubbard, again, he's in doubt. That's the Daniel Erving case. Ray Hubbard Lake is where he perished at. Ray Hubbard, suspected racist when he was in office controlling the parks and recreation in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. He was in charge when they made Oak Cliff Negro Park. Said they didn't want the black people. They didn't want Daniel Erving at their park. So we'll make a park over here for you. Literally, the name Oak Cliff Negro Park in the Dallas region. I suppose they've edited the name. In my opinion, hey, keep it like that. That's what y'all named it. Keep it Oak Cliff Negro Park. They should have cowboys with the tailgates when the season starts. Go out to Oak Cliff Negro Park. How about them Cowboys? Woo! Come on. We will be here at minimum on Thursday, Neutralizing Workplace Racism, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And then on Friday for the Catherine Massey Book Club. I said this is our required book. At least every year we should have one book that is required. Really, the Catherine Massey Book Club should be required. If we are in a so-called post-literate era where people are not reading, and it is to our detriment, and I would say especially black people, because we didn't read enough anyway. And that is exactly what we need to be doing: reading, strengthening our brain computer, learning more, learning how white people use words to confuse us and keep us subject to the system of white supremacy racism. Hey, that is exactly, we use the Catherine Massey Book Club to read, get better with words, and have that sustained focus with complex tasks, not emojis and profanity and jargon and slang and lol and WTF and all that. Like, come on, man. We are going to need high brain functioning to put white people out of business, unless I've been misinformed. Read. As a matter of fact, one of those storage break-ins here with the white supremacist paramilitary gangs, they had all these firearms all over their residence, and I mean military-type firearms. There was suspicion that they had broken into a military base to steal munitions and such. But next to all the guns and ammunitions and such, they had books and books and books. Certainly they had books about white supremacy racism, for sure, but they had lots of books in general. I thought, dang, it made me think that the books and the guns were one and the same. All weapons in the war of white supremacy racism, it's all the same. Because they had literally, they had tons of pictures over and over. The books next to the guns, the books next to the guns, one and the same. Reading nonfiction more important than watching television. Again, the Catherine Massey Book Club, the memoirs of Robert and Mabel Williams, this coming Friday. We are a little ways into the book since we've done our 2 sessions, but man, it has been amazing. I'm so glad I picked this selection. I've learned so much and so much more to go. Dr. King popping up in the book, Vietnam, Cuba, Fidel Castro, Minister Malcolm X, who I was not thinking, but he should be in here as well. So looking forward, pay attention, do some and you can do some reading with other non-white people if that might make it more enjoyable, or it doesn't feel like such work, or it doesn't feel maybe so boring or uninspiring to hear other non-white people, victims of racism, sharing their thoughts about the book. And at least for me, sharing their excitement, because wow, it has been at least the first 2 weeks. I don't know if the whole thing will be like this, but at least the first 2 weeks have been very informative. It will definitely hold your attention. I'm looking forward to reading because we haven't really got to the good parts of it yet. He's been fighting the Klan and all the rest of it, so it has been amazing in my view, and we have lots more to go. Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, Catherine Massey Book Club. Anywho, much obliged for folks tuning in. Hopefully we've been worthy of your Saturday evening. Speak honestly to your children. You can share the Context of White Supremacy radio programs with your offspring and discuss some of the reports. Share your views, review some of the reports that are discussed, especially if you're in your region. Review, discuss, and keep up with them on your own. Sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy racism. We need high-functioning brain computers. We are in the 100 deadliest days of the summer of the year, so I'm told, particularly for people who are younger. Maybe you haven't been driving as long, don't have as much behind-the-wheel experience. You do not want to be out late. So that's like after 10 and such, once it gets dark. You do not want to be out late, especially on the weekends, intoxicated, especially if you have a lot of black people in the vehicle. You are asking for all kinds of trouble from other civilians, like the folks who choked and killed Corey Stingley, enforcement officials, all of the above. You get to one spot and stay there. You can have your fun. It's summertime. If you have other non-white people that you want to go and hang out, get to one location and stay there. Especially if it's like, we want to party all night long, pick one spot and stay there. You do not want to be gallivanting and roaming around when you're under the influence late 11, 12, 1. You are asking for trouble. And you certainly, for Nolan Wells, you do not want to be at the jamboree as the only black person. I would even say I would not want to be partying with no white people. I got to keep an eye on them. Do you know them? Is this going to get rowdy and dangerous? We already got enough dangers and hazards to navigate as victims of racism. We don't need no extra problems. Be extra alert if you're going to be out and about, especially on the road. Have your code together so you can get back in one piece and avoid problems with enforcement officials, badge or no. All of that said, Creator, we ask that you remind us, stop saying not all white people are racist, for Nolan Wells, for Daniel Erving, for Sade C. Robinson, many, many others. Stop saying not all white people are racist. Apologies to your white friends. Stop saying, stop name calling and cursing people classified as black. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cow signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed.
I'm a victim, brother.
Problem. You're a victim.
I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning.
Shut up.
The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.